Um, yeah, that's a good beginning.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So feel free to talk about what you're doing. All the cameras are rolling.
So this is an order that I got in. It's about 80% put together, and then I had AfterMAF, and so here I am finishing it up.
Is the order made by a private individual or a bookstore or what?
A private individual who I've not come into contact with yet, but they ordered a bunch of stuff all relating to the Bousangeau group, so I can see that they somehow found out about them, got online, and went, holy shit!
Somebody's publishing that stuff in new translations.
Right. And then they also, I have a little Patreon account that I use for kind of subscriptions. So depending on the tier that people pay, they can get a postcard every month, or they get all of the pamphlets, or they get all of the chapbooks. And he just also signed up for the chapbook subscription moving forward. So somebody who's pretty interested in what I'm doing.
So Bousangeau, what does that mean in English, if anything?
Nothing. Basically, there's actually still debate about where the name comes from. It came from it definitely was working class Parisian slang in the 1830s. The scuttlebutt, which, there are basically two theories. One is that it referred to a particular kind of hat that was worn by the dock workers on the Seine. Which some of the Bousangeau ended up wearing. The other theory is that it was slang for the scum on the floor of a brothel. And
It'd be
also,
nice to know whether any of those theories are true or not.
I don't know. That's all we have to go on, really. And what's also interesting is that they let me see. Technically, it should have been spelled
with a T.
With a T.
All right, I've got it. You can let go of it now.
So then the Bousangeau, in their own words, in order to piss off the bourgeoisie, deliberately misspelled it.
Well, that's funny because there used to be a group from Virginia called Psychodrama.
Okay.
And they spelled the word correctly, Psychodrama, and then they changed it by taking out, I think maybe the Y, I forget now, but misspelling it. And I asked them why they did that. And Brett Kirby, who was probably the most active person of the group, said, "Well, Psychodrama can't spell Bousangeau." Is that correct?
I guess it would be Bousangeau, apparently, specifically. Although because when I first discovered them, I really wasn't speaking French yet. I've fallen into the habit of mispronouncing it, which is embarrassing. So I think it actually should be Bousangeau, but I always say Bousangeau.
Oh, okay.
But I think it actually should be a hard G.
Okay, because I've been pronouncing it with a hard G.
I think you're actually more correct.
Okay, well, your French is bound to be better than mine because mine is atrocious. But
my
I'm
spoken
glad
French is far inferior to my written French.
Yeah, which brings us up to the topic of translating. You do a lot of French to English translating.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think you fare as a translator?
I mean, definitely better than nothing, which is one thing because of the stuff that I'm translating. Everything I translate, and this is especially when I started out and knew that I was weak.
Yeah.
I was like, if something's been translated by someone who's fluent in French, I don't need to worry about it. But I'm like, if I'm translating people who have never been available before, anything's better than nothing.
Yeah.
I think I've improved a lot. I'm very bad at spoken French. I can barely speak it aloud, and I'm not good at understanding it when it comes to me because I pretty much learned through translation.
Yeah.
But I am very careful about it. So my feeling is, although I'm not as fluent in the French, I take the time and the effort to make sure that I'm doing it right. You know?
Yeah.
And then what I do think my strength is that I am a poet. My big pet peeve about Anglophone translation of verse is that the prevailing attitude is that people in the past, if they put, a tremendous amount of time and effort into making something closed form, it's because they were too stupid to know that they didn't have to. And so why worry about it? It's hard. It's hard to make a rhymed poem, and that means it's impossible. So just don't worry about it. Just translate the meaning of the words and you're fine.
Yeah.
And my attitude is people weren't fucking idiots.
Yeah.
And if they put that much time into wanting to have it be a sensuous physical experience, maybe that was important to them.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is where my strength as a translator is.
Yeah.
I look at how did they write the poem, what did their priorities seem to be, and I try to actually bring that forward.
Yeah.
So I think my although my French is not as strong, I think, as a lot of translators, definitely isn't. I feel I can, to a large extent, especially, except when it's vernacular and stuff like that, I'm sure there are things that I miss in slang. But I can kind of fill in most of those blanks in my knowledge, I feel, by being very meticulous about my, semantic aspect of the translation. And then I actually try to write these things like poems. And the way that I do it is I try to imagine, this relates to my Revenant Camaraderie pamphlet that I just published, actually. I kind of imagine they're sitting there right next to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, whatever I'm doing, I want to make sure they're okay with it. And if I'm doing something they wouldn't have done, I want to explain to them, look, this is how the avant-garde is now. This is why I'm going to do this a little bit. And if I feel that I could explain to them if they were here, this is why I'm doing this.
Then you're probably okay. Yeah.
If I feel like they would be like, look, I worked my ass off on this shit and you just ignored this whole aspect of the poem, I'm like, I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm considerably more confident now than I was when I started. Because I've learned to translate through... I've learned French mostly through translation.
Is this okay here?
That's fine. I'm going to be
over your head.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. The only... I did fail to pull all my books, so I'll probably be doing a little bit of going back and forth here to pull stuff off the shelves.
Oh, perfect. No, you're already archived. I'm facing. Yeah, you were right there. Yes. All right.
I'm not blocking your view.
No, I can see Olchar. I'm going to look at him, I think, not you. Yeah.
I can't see very good. I'm going to have to use the eyes in the back of my head.
Yeah, I'm not blocking your view.
You're rocking the view.
I did this last year and a lot of the same people. So what I'm actually talking about today are going to be stuff that I've added to the archive since last year, but I've still got a bunch of the same stuff out from last year, so there's a lot more to look at, when I'm done or whatever. But I'm just going to go over some of the new stuff that I thought was interesting. And I'll talk a little bit about the general archive for people who haven't been here before, but basically there are kind of three, libraries or archives or whatever you want to call it here. You've got the Revenant archive, which is the old stuff, which is pretty much, how I make the cutoff exactly, pre-micropress or whatever. It's basically going from about 1790s mostly up through 1940s or so, 50s.
Well, why don't you go ahead and finish up your order there?
All right.
Maybe you could just tell me what the titles are as you put them in the envelope or whatever.
Yeah, so we've got the Buzango sampler, choice morsels from the Buzango.
Yeah.
Which is, at this point, the only anthology for this group ever published in any language.
Well, more power to you.
And I'm working on a full-length anthology that would be a couple hundred pages of text with a good, long, in-depth introduction. But that's going to take me probably another 5 years, so I wanted to get something out.
Yeah.
That can kind of get across why these people are worth looking at.
Yeah.
So this is a book I was really a long time in the making.
Yeah.
Because this really was the group that made me start learning French, because I found out about them and I was like, holy fuck, this is like punk in the 1830s. Where can I read this? Nowhere. Okay, time to learn
You
French.
must have had a hard time even finding the French thing.
Even the French stuff is difficult to find a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's without the internet. Most of it's either Internet Archive, or I've had to actually collect the original editions from the 19th century.
So did you find stuff by the Vuzengo on the Internet Archive?
There is some stuff.
Mm.
Yeah. You can find collections of, or again, you're mainly looking at either editions by the 1830s up to maybe the 1880s, and even those were underground publications at the time.
Yeah.
And then by the 70s, I'm switching over to the other zine archive. So most of this stuff, so this is all Revenant Archive stuff here. That stuff is zine archive. Most of that stuff's most of it's around thousands up, because that's when I got involved in stuff. But there's a good amount of stuff from the 80s and 90s in there too, and a few things from earlier. And then basically this is like the Jim Leftwich closet back here to a large extent. Not everything in there is from Jim, but a lot of that is stuff from Jim's personal archive that when they headed out to go around the country, he kind of split up his gigantic amount of stuff. So,
Review of Jim Leftwich's The Blue Seam by Tentatively A Convenience, September 12th to 13th, 2022. There was a time when I felt very actively engaged with a variety of creative scenes: experimental writing, anarchism, experimental music, underground movie making, mail art, neoism. These days, despite the intensity of my previous involvement, I feel estranged from just about everything. There have been various reasons for this, mostly, let's say, just due to the changing mediascape. The last publication I liked contributing to, Autoliths, censored me out of a recent edition because I submitted work critical of the medical-industrial complex. Still, before this, Autoliths provided a good sampling of work by visual poets and helped me feel somewhat in touch with that scene. Hence, Autoliths kept the work of Jim Leftwich before my attention. In the meantime, I've been frustrated in Pittsburgh, where I live, because a combination of gentrification and the quarantine has reduced my previously multitudinous screening and performing opportunities to almost null. I searched for some place that was open to the likes of me, and finally happily found Art Rat Studios in Roanoke, Virginia, thanks to my old friend Brian Gentry. I've since given 2 performances there, 88 Instruments and Consciousness Expansion. Not only has this been a good experience because of the friendly atmosphere of the venue and because of the aesthetic and philosophical continuity with previous spaces that I've liked, but it's also resulted in a strengthening of connections to scenes that I've drifted away from. As for that, I have Olchar E. Lindsann to thank. Olchar attended my first performance there and performed sound poetry on the same bill. He was excellent. As much as I love sound poetry, the heyday of any preponderance of it in my life is decades behind me. To witness a great performance by someone of a younger generation was delightful. Making things even better, Olchar came with a folder full of publications from him to give me. At first, I admit to being a bit wary because the days of truly special printed matter seem to be also long behind me. That said, I've enjoyed reading Lindsann's monOcle-Lash anti-press chapbooks very much, and have been deeply impressed with some of Olchar's ways of rewriting history. I've been going from being someone deeply involved with cultural undergrounds to being someone reconnecting with at least 2 or 3 of them thanks to a crew of oddball intellectuals and creatives in Roanoke and their friends from round and about, most of whom I've long since known and often lost touch with, has been a boon to my social survival. That, in a roundabout way, brings me to Jim Leftwich's The Blue Seam. Leftwich had been a Roanoke resident until recently, so it's unfortunate that I didn't get to meet him in person during my 2 visits there. The Blue Seam was published by monOcle-Lash in July 2020, written September 2016, and is probably the thing of most interest to me that I've read by him yet. It could be called arcane and scholarly. It could be called part trash poe. It's the combination of currents that makes it so pleasing to me. The cover image might be called an alchemical work, a work ripe with promising symbolism. Leftwich starts off with an explanation of it. Called the flower of wisdom, the philosophical fruits are represented by the white lunar rose, left, the red solar rose right, and the mysterious blue rose center. They spring from the work of Mercurius, represented by the dragon contained within the vessel or womb of the opus. The six-pointed star represents the reconciliation of the opposites, masculine, feminine. Rube 42. H. Rusner, Pandora, Basel, 1582. Page 1. Mythic figures are dropped into the poetic lines. Suspended and recite the ancient unnameable Cyclops Nervolator. The Delphic coup at Delphi hirsute apples the supernal melons of the Apollo, page 5. And we move on to more alchemy. The pie ceiling is made of the four elements, and the bodies are competently dissolved in sour quicksilver. It is a mobile water as white as tears. The blue Ouroboros quietly adjourns in Colorado as in the sun, page 3. Even if one is perplexed by what one might call the semi-occult language, one might still find it poetically pleasing. I do. For a change, throwing the Bible in doesn't bother me, it just adds to the mix. Psalm 118:22. The stone which the builders refuse is becoming the headstone of the corner. Matthew 21:42. Jesus saith unto them, Did you ever read in the scriptures, the stone which the builders rejected, the same has become the head of the corner? This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Page 4. And as part of my small world becoming even smaller at the same time as it's getting larger again, Chapter 4 starts off with this. Ficus strangulensis in Brink number 1, no date, early 90s. The 30th Psalm, after 5 passes through Thesaur WPM. The paragon individual in Still My Shepherd, I shall not good. He maketh me to lure leash in time epoxy. He leadeth me beside branch waters. Pages 4 to 5. That'll be familiar to just about anyone raised Christianine in English-speaking countries. Psalm 23, King James Version. 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. 2. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. It's a small world thingy for me because Ficus was one of my correspondents until I elucidated some medical opinions of mine. But let's get back to alchemy, shall we? The blue seam is a comprehensive behest of gold, the Christian gold, concentrated on the fourth step of his researches, methods of Vulcan's net capturing Daedalus and Icarus, the understanding and reckoning of cooking, changing from fire to writing in a letter, who we must assume would value herbs and the other processes of blacksmithing more than the traditional alchemy of the pen before us. Page 6. The entirety of 7. Carl Jung, Lecture 8, 20th of June, 1941. In the book Pandora, from which this picture is taken, we find so-called explanations. You will soon see why I say so-called. Under the letter A we read, Young, old, therefore is God Jesus Christ himself, his Holy Ghost, young, old, proper or belonging to, terra, earth. They call that an explanation, page 7. I suppose such a critique could apply to this entire chapbook, and Leftwich's inclusion of it might show a tad of humor.
I don't have that stuff out, but it's all in shoeboxes and things that he very meticulously sorted, and they have catalogs inside each box and everything. So if anybody wants to look at that stuff, a lot of it is stuff from his collaborators and stuff from Mehrl-Bennett. So there's that stuff too. Like I said, I don't have it out right now, but if you want to look at it, it's easy to pull out.
Carl Jung, Lecture 8, 20th of June, 1941, page 8. The prima materia is also called the ignium internum of et occultum, the inner and concealed fire, and the limus microcosmi, slime of the small world. This last name is interesting inasmuch as the microcosmos is man, and limus is dirt or slime. Limus microcosmi is the dirt of man. It is also called vilissimum, the vilest, cheapest, and most despised thing which is to be found everywhere. In this aspect, therefore, the thing which is rejected as worthless or even pernicious is the prima materia, pages 8 to 9. Hence the Bible quotes that preceded this. Another small world, for me, citing, follows this mention of another shared correspondent. The huge box had been sealed with report tape. I peeled off a strip of the tape and folded it so it would fit in an envelope. Then I sent in my report to DeVilla Sloan for the Carnival of Trash, page 12. Sloan's color scans of the result follow. This then is trash poe's prima materia. Trash poets and cultors generally acknowledge that Lefwich invented trash poe over a decade ago. Of course, this claim is questioned sometimes by Lefwich himself as well as the Schwitterpoe faction of trash poets, among others, page 14. Indeed, saying that Lefwich invented trash poe seems like an unsupportable claim given Kurt Schwitter's merits and the work of D.A. Levy. The cover of Levy's 1964 5 Cleveland prints is of a used condom. Perhaps Lefwich coined the term trash poe, I don't know. Ruck et al. Argued that the term hallucinogen was inappropriate owing it to its etymological relationship to words relating to delirium and insanity. The term psychedelic was also seen as problematic. The meanings of the term entheogen were formally defined by Ruck et al. In a strict sense, only those vision-producing drugs that can be shown to have figured in shamanic or religious rites would be designated entheogens. But in a looser sense, the term could also be applied to other drugs, both natural and artificial, that induce alterations of consciousness. Page 20. I prefer consciousness expansion as the term that describes the affects of the ingestion of drugs, most often said to be for the purpose of getting high. I think I read the term entheogen in this chapbook first, but then I recently ran across it on the website for COSM, the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors. After having taken a fair amount of LSD, mushrooms, peyote, MDA, hash, pot, and other such things, I'm now sick of what I've come to think of as the over-association of consciousness expansion with drugs. Hence my piece entitled Consciousness Expansion Score Movie, in which the building of an addition to my house becomes an act of consciousness expansion, as does the playing of a soundtrack to it. 3. Strange attractors are unique from other phase space attractors in that one does not know exactly where on the attractor the system will be. Page 20. Strange attractors are still unknowns in my world, even though I've run across mention of them before. So I looked at a math overflow discussion. Maybe it's not the right place for this, but I don't know the right definition of a strange attractor. Wikipedia states that an attractor is informally described as strange if it has non-integer dimension or if the dynamics on it are chaotic. In the Tucker's paper about Lorentz system, it is written that an attractor is called strange if for almost all pairs of different points in B, parentheses, A sub F, close parentheses, their forward orbits eventually separate by at least a constant, I don't know, I think this is probably omega, but I'm not really sure, O with a straight line diacritical mark over, depending only on A sub F. I feel that these definitions are not equivalent. I also would welcome links to useful literature. This is a good question. For some reason, terminology in dynamical systems is not standardized at all, and it's interesting to disentangle various definitions. A good book to look at is Differential Equations, Dynamical Systems, and an Introduction to Chaos. The authors, Hirsch, Smale, Devaney, are at the center of the field, and they point out there's no standard definition of even attractor, let alone strange attractor, which they only use once informally. In my view, definitions based on the shape of an attractor, like the first part of Wikipedia's, are a little odd, since you can have chaotic dynamics on geometrically simple attractors. Think of a map with a circle as an attractor on which the dynamics are like, again, I'm not sure what this symbol is. It's like a capital O with a straight line through the middle of it. I'm going to say that's omega. And I forget what the arrow means, since I've forgotten almost all of my math. I think that's approaches or something like that 2 times again, I'll call it omega. The second Wikipedia definition that the dynamics are chaotic might imply the Tucker definition, but that in turn depends on your definition of chaos. There is interesting work on how various criteria for chaos relate. A good entry point might be on Devaney's definition of chaos, Banks et alia, American Math, Monthly, 1992. Maybe Leftwich's The Blue Seam is a strange attractor because I'm strange and the book attracted me.
Revenant Archive. It's mostly stuff that I get. You could, like with the avant-garde tradition, I guess. I look at it as a community archive. So when I'm collecting stuff, most of a big part of what I'm looking at is just the actual connections of collaboration and friendship and stuff like that behind those. So that it's meant to be kind of a way of connecting really early counterculture up to the present time. So most of it is avant-garde writing, but then there's other stuff that is just kind of tangentially related or that I'm just into. So you've got some weird fiction stuff in there, you've got some comedy stuff in there, you've got a fair amount of like socialist and anarchist, especially utopian socialist stuff, like Saint Simonian and Fourierist and like pre-Marxist radical politics and stuff like that in there too. A lot of books, I think somewhere around 400 or 500 books. And journals, a lot of journals. Some have got single issues, some have got pretty big runs. A lot of lithographs, which a lot of them are up in the hallway there. Which there's a lot I can say about them, but there's like almost no way to. I don't know if everyone wants to pack into the hallway. I can talk about them, but maybe grab me individually later, and I can talk about it maybe a little more usefully. But a lot of lithographs and some etchings and stuff like that. I also have a respectable collection of like letters, some pieces of sheet music, and other kinds of ephemera, just weird things that are hard to categorize, but that belonged to people in the avant-garde.
Can you give me an example of a sheet music piece?
Let me see here. Where is it? Where are they?
If it's too much trouble, don't worry. I just thought you might be able to say off the top of your head.
Well, I mean, like I have a fair number of a few things by a guy named Napoleon Moussard, who I don't know why nobody talks about this guy, but he was a like dance hall band leader in the 1830s and 40s who created all of these dances, and he was like he was the favorite composer of the French Romantics, and so he was incorporating non-musical sounds into his scores in the 1830s, so like cannons firing as part of the score. He had a piece called the Broken Chair Gallop, which is people smashing chairs in time with the music.
We did one year.
We did. I mean, that same year we did.
What's the other name?
The Infernal Gallop.
Yeah.
And that was his most famous, which is, if this sounds familiar, the 1830s. Everybody, you have your partner, you link up, and you run around in a circle as fast as you can, and if anybody falls, you trample them. So the only difference, and there's actually a print in here showing that, and there is a bourgeois couple on the ground going like, ah! And then all these people in like costumes like, and the only difference between that and a circle pit is that for the Infernal Gallop, you keep time by shooting pistols into the air. So I have a couple of his scores and a letter where he's firing one of his musicians, and it just says, Napoleon Moussard has the honor of informing you that you are no longer a member of his orchestra.
The cannons thing wasn't totally unusual because, like, the War of 1812 Overture starts off with cannons, and there's at least one other piece by a well-known classical composer that has cannons in it because there was so much classical music that was in honor of the wars that have been happening. So whatever, I'm just putting that out there. But this guy sounds amazing. I've never heard of him before.
Right, yeah. And he also, some of his pieces were basically collaged together by taking motifs from popular music and then rearranging them. So there's also this like pre-appropriated music and collage. So yeah, really interesting guy. So I do have some of that somewhere. I'm sure I'll find it eventually. I spread everything out, so I'm like, oh, it's right here. No, it's not anymore. It was a week ago. So, yeah, but some of it will come up as we're going through stuff later.
You wouldn't have any toy symphony scores, would you?
No.
Or have you ever heard of a guy named Henri Kling?
I don't think so.
Okay, whatever. I'm just, if I could see a toy symphony score, it would make me really happy. So it seemed like the kind of thing you might have.
Sorry.
That's all right. I'm not totally sad because I didn't get it. I'm still okay.
All right. Well. Yeah. So yeah. Well, a lot of other things, and I'll pull off some other bits of ephemera and stuff like that. So yeah, Buzango, and then he ordered basically all of the individual. I'm trying to get chapbooks out of all the writers, and then I want to do some folders with prints for all the printmakers, and eventually get at least one chapbook size, work, whatever, from everybody. So he ordered all of them that I've got so far. So this is Lycanthropy by Petrus Burrell, who is one of the main founders of the group. This is the second edition, because the first edition was one of the very first, if not the first, book I did on the Revenant Editions sub-imprint, which is the reprint and translation imprint of monOcle-Lash. But the first one was, like I said, was the first one, so it was mainly a couple public domain translations from the 19th century, where, of course, they picked the least offensive poems they possibly can find, right? And so I'm like, by the time that, it's like, this came out 2022, the first one was 2014. By the time it came to 2022, I had so many better translations to put in there. So this is a pretty heavily expanded second edition of that, because Burrell is badass and deserves to be represented in that way. So I'm just going to show you some of the stuff that I've got in the last year that I think is particularly interesting. I'll pass that around, and then actually what I'll do first is just kind of go through some of what I've got sitting out for later. I mean, that you can just look at later if you'd like. So, I don't know what have I got. So these are kind of, all these stacks are kind of themed. So this stuff is mostly early micropress and self-publishing stuff. So like amateur publishing, the amateur press movement is something which is still going, but it started in the 1860s. And it was right after they invented the hectograph, which was the first home printing technology that was like fairly affordable. And by 1867, there were like hundreds of people, mostly like teenagers, publishing their own magazines in their houses and trading them. It's exactly the zine network, essentially. So I have some of those. This is the oldest. This is a made by a 15-year-old in 1876. And it has a little poem about how all the kids in Washington have their own printing press now. I love this poem. It's like... I kind of want to read it. I always want to read it.
Like everybody's got a printer now.
Yeah.
Sort of the equivalent.
Exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So
the printing press is
and they break down in a year.
Right. I'm guessing the hectographs were at least as bad.
You have to find another one that works, because half those printers
Right.
don't work.
Down in 6 months.
Yeah.
I went through 4 or 5 of them before I found one I could use
Planned
that
obsolescence
worked.
is getting shorter and
Right.
Would print,
Yeah.
would copy.
They're
They're just pieces of junk.
They are.
Planned obsolescence.
That's because they're actually aliens impersonating
Instant
human
obsolescence.
technology.
Yeah.
They're just waiting to eat us.
The most recent printer I
What's
got.
that?
You said you
Yeah,
really
it's
liked
amazing.
Some brands that
We
kind
do.
of brag about
I
has
mean, I
these
can if
tanks
you want.
that will
Yeah.
really
I'd like
let you
to.
fill with tanks.
It
It's
looks
supposed
like
to be more
tiny,
economical.
It is, yeah.
It's already started
Quite tiny.
misbehaving, and I haven't even been through the first
All right.
round of tanks yet.
There you go. At least you got that far.
Yeah.
By popular
Well, I
demand.
bought more ink too. I always have that ink on standby, so if I run out, I don't have it.
Here's A Living Phenomenon by, what's this kid's name again?
George W. Washington?
No. I forget his name off the hand. It's somewhere. But anyway, so it's from 1876. Because, hey, hello. As I walked down the avenue a day or two ago, I met a boy whose puckered face gave evidence of woe. His grimy knuckles rubbed his eyes, the tears poured forth apace, and plowed their furrowed path adown his dirty little face. He lifted up his voice to weep. Ah, what a voice he had. I wondered what the trouble was that made him feel so bad. I thought perchance that stomach ache his youthful form might rack, or that his father with a gad had warmed his little back. A kindly impulse stirred my heart. I took him by the hand and asked the reason for his grief in accents kind and bland. Say, whence these tears, my little son, and why this loud lament? Hast thou been lashed about thy stern by some stern parent? Made parent into a 3-syllable word. Or has too great a hankering for lollipop or cake convulsed thy little abdomen with throes of stomach ache? He struggled for a moment hard, and then his sobs controlled. And this is word for word the tale this little outcast told. If you were in my place, old chap, you'd holler too, I guess. I'm the only boy in Washington what hain't no printing press. So, by 1876, there was like a thriving zine community in Washington, D.C., apparently. And if you look on the back, this wasn't even what I was going to talk about. This is why this is going to take 5 hours. There are all these adverts for small, a movable type and stuff like this for the hectograph. So there was enough that there was a little market for these home printing, companies to sell stuff. So.
Your Revenant approach to it is great because as a person born in the middle of the 20th century, I'm already becoming somewhat aware of how much the 20th century is probably going to disappear in my lifetime.
Right.
So then if you go a century further back from that, you're really in trouble. And one of the only disciplines in which that doesn't happen so much is with classical music, where the people who are promoters of classical music are stuck in the centuries past.
Right.
And anything that would have been radical about the stuff that they're stuck with or stuck on is no longer recognizable as such to contemporary listeners, so it's no longer a threat.
Right. Now that's an interesting thing, because with the Revenant stuff, a lot of that same thing can really easily happen, because we think Dada, you read a Dada poem, and you're like, this is fucking crazy, there's no sentences. And a lot of this stuff, for that same reason, you don't read it and immediately be like, what the fuck, this is crazy. Which I kind of talked about a little bit in my AfterMAF set.
Yeah.
So a lot of my introductions and things like that, and these are actually doing the opposite of that. They're trying to reclaim that radicality and help the reader to see this is how this operated at its time, and this is how it connects to radical work now.
Well, even talking about the other day, talking about Victor Hugo in exile.
Right.
People know Victor Hugo.
Right. And
to them, he's just this major writer. They don't know that he was a major figure of the revolution,
right,
etc.
Right.
So that actually makes a big difference in your understanding of who he was, if you realize his social context.
Right, exactly.
But instead of just thinking him as a writer who was a good writer.
Made some good novels and some good plays.
Yeah.
Right. That Les Miserables musical, I think you wrote that.
Right, which I find a little hard to get through. I mean, I respect him in general and like his writing in general, but I would. The Les Miserables thing has been turned into sort of a Disney product or whatever, and it's a little hard to take it because of that.
It's an interesting thing because one of the main kind of readerships of the Revenant editions stuff, especially early on, is the the Les Miserables fanfic community.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know, this is probably 10 years ago. I got an email from somebody, just being like informing me, just so you know, the whole international Les Miserables fanfic community, your website is our main historical resource.
Oh wow, that's great.
And this fanfic community are really historically minded, and I've published in some of the issues of Revenants. They're doing original archival research.
Yeah.
It was people in the Victor Hugo fanfic community who about a year ago discovered 6 or 7 members of the Busan Go group that I didn't even know about. Yeah. But they dug up a early reprint of a police report because they were spying on the Buzango headquarters, and this police report mentions 5 or 6 other people.
Oh wow, that's
And this
great.
is all coming from fanfic
Thank
people.
you, police.
And it's all like fanfic people who are like, what if Amrola was gay? But they do their research so well. So it's an interesting thing. It's something I would never even have thought that this would be useful for, but I'm like, that's really interesting. And it is another group of people who are taking this and bringing it into the present,
Yeah.
you know, in a very personal way. So it's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not, you know, I'm not. I love Victor Hugo, but I'm not like, you know.
Yeah, me.
That's not my thing. But
I've read
it's really,
two of his
it's one of
novels,
my
I think.
favorite uses of my work. you
Yeah.
know, So this stack is all a lot of it's APA stuff like that, and some of it's avant stuff. So like this is this was a satirical self-published magazine by Alphonse Karr. This is from 1841, and it's basically stuff that couldn't have gotten out with censorship other than legally it had to be done by subscription, which is kind of the 19th century version of like a crowdfunding, I guess you might say. It had to be sold privately, basically. And you can even tell with these, this is in better shape. I have a big run behind Loon there. And some of them are not in such great shape. This is one of them that's better, but so this one you can actually carefully flip through. Oh yeah, when you hold a book, you gotta do this. Like, please don't pick anything up by a page or a cover. Like, do this, and I like keep it about 45 degrees. Okay. And then this is one that came out a couple years later called The Black Butterflies, which specifically says it was inspired by this. And these were two, part of the French Romanticist community. So anyway, so that's that stuff. This is stuff on utopian socialism. None of these are all the stuff. I just picked up the most interesting stuff for each of these kind of categories. This is all stuff from the Oneida colony. If people know Oneida, it was a utopian socialist commune in New York, which lasted a long time. I think it lasted like 70 or 80 years. It had like, obviously it was socialist and like one of the first kind of free love-ish communes in America. After the colony dissolved, that's where the Oneida Spoon Company came from, like the Silverware Company.
Isn't there a band called Oneida too?
I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
My dishware is an Oneida scroll set
Okay, yeah.
that I really like and got invested in.
It's such a weird like backstory for this. Yeah,
It's like the tea thing.
iconic. Yeah. But anyway, so let's see. So there's this, which is Filote Onetti, one of my favorite poets. This is the guy whose resignation letter I was talking about upstairs.
And that's all you needed to do was just hold it like that. And when we get to the second part of our recording or whatever, that's when I'll just ask you to have a cleared space, put it down on your desk to make sure maximum lighting, and then I will tilt the camera toward it to get a shot. And I'll eventually use the scans that you've offered, which are helpful.
Right. Because I can point out too with these, and I try to do this with all of the Revenant Edition stuff. All of these covers, this is by one of the Buzango. This is a portrait of Burrell by one of his friends in the Buzango. This was the original frontispiece for Onetti's collection by one of his friends in the Buzango. Same here. So when I have illustrations and things like that, also I'm trying to make those correspond to personal collaborative and friendship relationships.
So you're not going to take
like
a
random.
You're not going to take a picture of Petrus Borel and subject it to Warhol colorization, for example.
Probably not. Yeah.
Well, I'm relieved by that.
Or just find a random, oh, this is an image I found online that would kind of illustrate it. They're all
right.
Yeah. So that's that stuff. These are just interesting books that have have been made unique. I'm trying not to talk a ton about all this stuff. And then some modernist, Dada journals and things here. I don't have a lot of modernist avant stuff because it's really expensive because people know what it is. The stuff I can collect more is stuff that nobody knows it's cool. But I do have some Dada stuff, including, this is before This is a journal published or edited by George Weber Montesson, who's one of the people I read last night. One of the cooler Dadas. Présence Africaine. This is an early Negritude journal, the like African diaspora kind of offshoot of surrealism. Beef, a surrealist journal. This is stuff relating to Théophile Gautier, who was a huge figure in the early French avant-garde. And that is all stuff that there was a collector from the 1890s, shortly after Gautier died, who collected a bunch of stuff. I haven't been able to figure out who it is, but it's very carefully labeled and mounted on backing and stuff like that. So I bought this whole collection of Gautier stuff from this earlier, that had been collected by this earlier archivist, who the seller couldn't tell me who it had been. But so this is Alphonse Breau, Cervantes.
Okay, again, if you don't mind, just for a second. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So there's that, which is another one, which he's one of the most. He was a bestseller at the time.
Really?
Which means nobody, as soon as he died, everybody forgot, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what happens when you're. And even the other people in the Bruce and Go were kind of like, he was a nice guy. You're like, They're like, he wasn't really hardcore enough romanticist for us, but he was a cool guy. We like him. We hung out,
Yeah.
But I found this early story republished. It had been reprinted in 1834 or 33 in an anthology in French of French stories published in New York, presumably for French expatriates. I suspect maybe for people expatriates from Quebec. After the Arcadians were dispersed after the French Indian War or something. Because George Washington was a fucking moron.
Well, I have no idea whether Washington was a moron or
Trust
not.
me, it's quite a story. How he pretty much single-handedly made that shit happen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, one of the worst military officers until the Revolution. Anyway, that's a whole other thing.
In this exhibit,
now I'm in history teacher mode.
Yeah, well, in this exhibit there was a wax figure of Washington in a diorama sitting by a fire or something and writing a letter. As one of the good things about working in museums is that then I could sit on the diorama next to him and get a picture of myself taken with George Washington while I was writing his letter.
Yeah.
So okay, sorry for that digression. So keep going.
But anyway, I found a story by him in this book that I bought, which I can find no bibliographic record of. But I saw it on eBay, and I was like, French language stuff published in New York. That's interesting for $20. Sure. I open it up. There's a story by Alphonse Breau, Cervantes in Madrid. It turns out to be metafiction from 1833, and it's a really fascinating little story. So, again, one of those things where it's purely through my archive that I find this thing, and
must be dangerous for you to spend time on eBay.
it really is. I think I was staying upstairs, like I had a kid who was writing about Fourierist movement in America, and I ended up buying 2 books because he used them, and I'm like, oh, what's that? Look at that. Oh. I'm like, damn it. Yeah,
Well,
I need to keep myself off of that shit.
Anything Fourier related is bound to be fascinating from my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I'm sure you know Jarry called his place the Philanstery.
Yeah.
That was another. That was also how I first got introduced to Fourier.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Over by Kathy here is this is just a bunch of stuff that is fragile and big. That's the thing they all have in common. Oh wait, over here, while I'm at it, here's one of Moussard's pieces of sheet music. Satan! and also his opera about Bluebeard, the mass murderer. So yeah, that's where they were. They were in here. Yeah, the Satan quadrille. That tells you what you need to know about French Romanticism. But this is just a bunch of, anything that's too... Oh yeah, I have a fairly decent collection of the Chat Noir, which is bohemian avant comedy. The Incoherence group, if that'll mean something to 5 people. They're super fragile, so I don't really want to take them out of here. But every college dorm has a Chat Noir poster in it, but this is actually what it comes from. So I don't know. There's other stuff in there, but that's what that is. Let me see. And then we got, this isn't actually what, so okay, this is A Dream by Forneray. Oh, I keep doing it. Little prose poem, which is interesting because he self-published all of his stuff. And he specifically said in here that he only wanted it to be printed on the recto of the pages. So this is actually one where I read the piece, and it was short, and I was like, oh, this is great. This is like nice little 8-page pamphlet or whatever. This will be easy. I translate it, start translating it, and then I realized that if I'm going to follow his directions, I'm going to have to actually make it twice as big a book as I had intended, which is still not huge, but
Yeah.
But Forneray is one who is usually listed in most sources online as a member of the Roanoke. He is a really great poet. He wasn't living in Paris at the time that they were a group, so in my opinion, that kind of means he wasn't a member of the group since he wasn't there.
Yeah.
But he is an awesome poet, and he did have connections with them. He's certainly a big part of avant romanticism. So it makes sense that the person would also order this. This is just one of the little. You can argue all day, I guess, about who's a member of what, because it's not like they had a official list. That's not how movements work, unless it's
Yeah. I mean,
that's how some movements work, but
Neoism.
not how they worked. Yeah.
Neoism. How could you ever possibly make a list of who the Neoists are?
It's really in that. And what I end up doing in here at the end is I make it a gradated thing. So I have when I do their little bios at the back, I've got the core members who indisputably are members, and I've got certain criteria about the sources of how I make these decisions. Then I've got the inner orbit, which are people that almost everybody would agree are members, quote unquote. And then I got the outer orbit, which are people who probably wouldn't have called themselves Buzango, but were hanging out with them all the time and collaborating very frequently, and were very much taking in that influence.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a more accurate way of how most movements work. It's a network that there's a kind of core of people, and there are people who participate in various ways.
And people who only participate for a year or 2 years or whatever, and then they're gone again.
Right. Like Alexandre Dumas, at an early stage, was arguably a member here. But by the time that he was eventually, he was one of the biggest playwrights in France, and they can't get published, so it becomes a little weird. So he also ordered this, which is not Buzango, but Get It Into Gear. This is a Alphonse Allais from the Chat Noir or the Incoherence and Hydropaths group.
Alphonse Allais I've heard of, not through you, through other people. So
yeah, he's not totally obscure. He's one of the less obscure people. And actually, Black Scat Press does a ton of Alphonse Allais. So I started translating a lot very early on, and then I realized that Doug Skinner is translating all of the stuff.
Oh, Doug Skinner. I think he's somebody I used to correspond with.
Okay, that would make sense. Yeah. He does a lot of really good translations. He's one of the... and then, until he passed away a few years ago, Brian Stableford, the two translators where I would keep... Oh, yeah, he's great. Oh, and he does sci-fi, too.
Right.
He did, which I haven't read any of yet.
He did... I mentioned to you Restif de Le Breton. He translated a couple of his things. He translated the one that's his main sci-fi thing.
Okay. Awesome.
And
more need to look it up now.
Yeah.
He was like my bête noir because I would keep starting to translate stuff, and then he would come out with the book, and I'm halfway through the translation, like, motherfucker! I'd actually tried to get in touch with him at one time to coordinate and be like, if you let me know what you're working on, I will work on other stuff.
Yeah.
But he never responded. I got the impression he was very kind of hermetic,
Yeah.
But yeah, so that kept happening, and then Doug Skinner has done that with quite a few things too. He's done a ton of good stuff.
Stableford's the one who got me interested in Restif de Le Breton, because I was always looking for science fiction before Frankenstein.
Right.
I love Mary Shelley, but there's all these people who don't. It's
Right.
just like the
Don't
people who
get
talk
that.
about William Burroughs as being the founder, or William
Right.
Burroughs and Brian Geist as starting the cut up. It's always like, like Mary Shelley wrote the first science fiction novel, and and that's completely not true.
Right.
Even though I think Frankenstein's a very important book, and I love Mary Shelley, but so it was thanks to Brian
Francis
Stableford. Well, and also
New Atlantis is
Cyrano de
definitely
Bergerac.
sci-fi. What's that?
Cyrano de Bergerac wrote one that's called something like A Voyage to the Star, the Sun and Moon, or something. Which I, of course, picked up and still haven't read
bits and
yet.
pieces of it.
Yeah. So okay.
So anyway, so this is one that I put out before Doug Skinner started stealing all of my.
That's the Alphonse Allais?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So he ordered that, and he ordered. Let me see. Another Alphonse Allais, I think. I think those were. I forget exactly what he ordered because every time somebody orders, I will at least top up to the next ounce with free stuff, with free pamphlets. And when somebody orders this much, I'll usually add another ounce worth of free stuff.
Yeah.
And I forget those things I know he ordered. I forget whether he ordered this. I might have thrown this one in because I was like, okay, you're interested in LA. Here's another LA. So this is a more recent one, Gloomful Poem. This is LA making fun of the decadent movement, basically. It's like fun little, extremely, satirical, dark story about a dude who's who ends up killing his wife and then finding someone else. Good times.
Yeah.
This I'm sending along because, like I said, he did the Patreon submission. This is so along with those once a month. I do one small zine, which is not available for sale. So either they're limited edition or this isn't quite limited edition, but it's something I only send out to people who I know will appreciate it. And it's not always this. I've got a few different titles that I switch through every month. But this one, Marginalia or Mania or Marginalia Mania, I don't know how you pronounce this. Have I sent this to you? Any of these to you? I might have. Who knows?
I don't remember
out of the
because
hundreds of things I sent you.
Unfortunately, my bed, which on
that's an unfair question.
It has so many things on it, and right now your publications are surrounding my main reading area, which is my bed. But I am being slow about getting through it all.
There's a lot there. But at any rate, this is something basically I'll just, during a month or like a week when I'm putting this together, I'll just, anything that I'm reading at the moment, and like, as you know, I've got a complicated cycle of like 150 books that I'm reading at any given time with all these complicated system. I'll take whatever I'm reading that really strikes me, especially if I'm seeing correlations between different books that I'm reading. And I'll just straight up copy pieces out and juxtapose them with my marginalia and my notes and things like that. So that's what this is. So this has stuff from the Popol Vuh, which I'm getting ready to teach.
That was also a music group, and Werner Herzog used them to do a lot of their a lot of his soundtracks. So
okay, interesting.
There you have a merger of two things that
one which I like and one which I don't.
One which you like and one which you can't stand.
So that I've got stuff from Sasha Engel, Plant Anarchy, which is interesting. He's trying to create a new alphabet based on a critique of how our alphabet aids the iterative process into kind of concreting into like a repetition and this kind of like mechanistic alienation of society. I'm trying to take an extremely complicated book and put it into a sentence here, but at any rate, stuff from that. And then let me see, some Derrida, which I felt from Grammatology, which I've been rereading bits of.
Oh, I have a copy of that. I've still never read it. It was actually given to me.
I love Derrida. I'm in the minority there.
Yeah, well, that was given to me by somebody who said, "Do you ever read this guy?" And I said, "No." He said, "Yeah, here, have a copy of this." Thinking that I would be interested in it, which I was, but that was like 30 years ago, and I still haven't read
just
it
haven't
yet.
gotten around to it. I have plenty of that stuff. Yeah. Should I keep going, or should I wait for you to?
No, these
This
other two
one's
calendars are still going.
All right. A book on John Winthrop Jr., who was one of the first, if not the first, governor of Connecticut, but was also an alchemist who started an alchemical colony in the 17th century in America and helped to stop the witch trial. Really interesting guy.
He did. What did he do with? He helped to stop the witch trials.
The Connecticut witch trials. Because he basically was like, look, I'm an alchemist. I know what witches. I know what witchcraft is, and this ain't it. This is just persecution. And then some Ivan Arguelles.
Well, you know,
and a bit of something on the shot noir.
So, is Ivan Arguelles related to Jose Arguelles?
His twin brother.
Really?
Isn't that? Yes.
Did you ever read his
Isn't that
book, The
fascinating?
Transformative Vision?
I haven't read it. I'm aware of it and aware of his work. And
I read it 50 years ago and thought it was really great. I have no idea
Right.
what I would think of it now, but it was
Yeah.
an important book to me at the time.
Yeah, it's in fact the one that I got here, the one that this came out of, is Fragments from a Gone World, Joe and I, Others, and it's a lot of it is about his brother, who passed away before he did.
Oh, really? Yeah, I don't really know that much about his brother, but for whatever reason, I ended up with that book and thought it was great.
Right. Yeah. All I've read from him was an interview in Gnosis magazine from the 80s.
Oh God, Jay Kinney.
Yeah, I inherited a bunch of those from Jim Leftwich, and I was like, oh, hey, Joe, what do you know? Jose Arguelles is in here.
Huh.
And then the other three in here are things that I threw in for free. This is a new one, The Young Lady and the Gravedigger by Melanie Waldo. I think a vastly underrated poet. Her stuff is fucking awesome.
How
This
many
is
things do you print out a week? You must print out an incredible amount of stuff.
Like copies or titles?
Titles. Like
It's
new
been-
titles. How many
yeah.
new titles do you have come out?
It varies a lot depending on my school schedule. So I have a lot more come out in the summer, and then a little short burst during or right after my winter break, and then you have a dry and a wet season, as it were.
Yeah.
But since I started the Patreon thing, which was last fall, I'm kind of committed to doing at least 2 pamphlets a month plus one limited edition zine or something like that. And then it's been probably generally maybe 8 to 10 somewhat bigger chapbooks a year, and then usually maybe a couple, maybe between anywhere from like 1 to 4 perfect bound books, probably. I think. Lately, a lot of it depends on my finances. I've been lucky the last 10 years, so I've been able to put out a lot more titles and a lot more copies than I was when I was working at the parking garage or working at the warehouse.
What warehouse did you work, or what type of warehouse did you work for?
It was a wood molding warehouse called Roma, who sold wholesale framing molding to frame shops.
Mm.
And so I was a quality checker, so I'm just taking them.
How long have you been the teacher?
Since I started, 2010 was when wait, is that right? I think I started in 2012. So it'd be about 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a gradual thing because I began as a volunteer. Literally, I started out as Brian Counihan asked me to come in for one day because he was doing a class on 19th century France. He knew I'd been doing Romanticist stuff. And then I was like, we were talking, we're like, I could come in a couple of times. And I'm like, I could come in. I bet work would let me come in once a week. They'd work with me. And then we're like, well, okay, you have class 3 times a week, right? I mean, I could work around that. What if I just come in all the time? You know what, Brian? Here's what we should do. There are a lot of great sources. It would not be that much extra work to just make it into a 4-volume set of hundreds of pages for a textbook.
Yeah.
I said to myself. Because definitely
Is that what you started publishing?
14-year-olds are going to be totally able to like deal with 1,000 pages in a semester of 19th century writing.
Of course, what higher priority could they have?
I mean, right, you know, like this isn't going to stress them out at all.
Yeah.
One thing I've learned is what's possible and what isn't. But so it was kind of a gradual thing. I was volunteer for a while, then I was part-time but paid for a while, and then finally went on full-time. So I'm always have trouble keeping track of when those various you know, landmarks were. Over there is a collection of Charivari. Charivari was a Romanticist satirical magazine that was mainly looking at underground dance culture in Paris, which was also one of the first like queer-friendly spaces in France or maybe in Europe, where they had specifically designed costumes that could be worn by any gender, and when you were wearing those costumes, people, it was understood, had to treat you as the gender you were dressed as. And so there are a lot of images in there, and some on the walls too you can see where they are openly showing gay relationships, openly showing trans people. You know, and so Charivari is really, really interesting, and they were also one of the main kind of sites of resistance to authoritarianism in the 1830s and 40s. The cartoonists were constantly in and out of jail for their opposition to the regime. So that's interesting. These are some other things. This is a death announcement for Henri de Liage, who was an avant occultist who worked closely with Gerard de Nerval. This is from his family, and you can tell his family did not like him. The whole thing is about how aristocratic his background is, and no mention of his literary or intellectual activity. They're just like, it's just like,
This man died.
family, the family of the family of the family of the family of the family is dead. Yeah, exactly. Here's a manuscript piece of music with Napoleon Moussard in collaboration with a couple other musicians.
Can I see that? Or
Yeah.
is it too fragile?
No, that's not too bad. And this, again, is just a bunch of random stuff that I need to put in here. And then after that are some sci-fi zines going back to from the 20s up to I think, maybe into the early 80s here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I've been putting a lot more pamphlets lately, which is nice because they're much easier to give out for free and to do trades.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm doing something like this does cost me $4 to print, you know, or something. So I can't give them out as much as I'd like. These are much simpler, you know. So this one's 4 Partings. This is just a little mini anthology. I just was looking through some of my poems, or some of my translations, and realized, first off, that I got this Marceline de Bourg-Valmore piece from 1820, The Parted, these are all breakup poems, which is not, I think Thomas Love emailed me after I gave him some stuff, and he was a little, you know, these are my thoughts as I went through these last night. And for 4 Partings, he was like, I really didn't expect you to put out a book about breakup poems. I'm like, that doesn't seem like you. I'm like, no, this has nothing to do with me. I was like, wait, I've got this poem, and then I've got this poem which quotes this other poem, and they have the same setup. And I was like, oh, it'd be nice to do these two together. And then I was like, wait a minute, I picked up this book, which by this guy named Misha Persol, who I've never heard of. This is probably his only book.
Yeah,
some of it is not very interesting. Some of it's really pretty interesting, but he had one too. And so I was like, I'll put these together. And then I was like, oh, Nettie's got a breakup poem too. I could do that. So I just kind of organically, I was like, I got a nice little 8-page book. Why not? And because of Nettie's in it, there is that Bousangeau connection, and then the other two of the other 3 are also French romantics, so I figured that'd be interesting to a person. And then lastly, Harmonian Eclogue. This is Le Conte de Lille. I passed around some of his books upstairs.
Yeah, I remember that.
And this is a Fourierist allegory, which if you didn't know was Fourierist, you would never know.
The amazing thing is how much influence he had, Fourier.
Yeah, and it's just like underground influence that like nobody. I think mainstream historians of ideas don't really. Again, the evidence is there. It's not like it's esoteric. but it's just kind of glossed over. It's ignored. They don't look at it, you know. But yeah, the more you look at it, it was everywhere, politically and in the avant-garde, you know, and especially that intersection. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really interesting here because, again, as I said upstairs, Leconte de Lisle has the reputation of being apolitical, but he was a Fourierist activist his whole life. And I'm like, how are these scholars, these academics, actually, I'm going to switch out my word, how are these academics convincing themselves that a committed Fourierist socialist is not politically committed?
Well, now...
Because Fourier doesn't count.
Now we have AI doing that job for us. Right. I wrote a piece for that'll hopefully be in the next issue of Oak Journal, where I found out that there were free AI services that write obituaries about people, right?
Oh, jeez.
And of course, there's a catch to it, which is that then after they write,
I would come back from the grave to disown them.
Well, exactly. I mean, are you serious?
You can't write four sentences about me, motherfucker?
Yeah, you can't write something about your parent or, other loved one or whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? So I thought that was so funny, the idea of AI writing something. But then I also knew that there would be a catch to it. And of course, the catch to it is that they then try to get you to spend money on placing those obituaries in various publications and, and doing all of the other bells and whistles types of things that go along with it. So I had to write one about me and then write one about, I don't know, Chocolate Bunny or something. And then I asked it to write one for AI. But the point here is that when they wrote them about me, and I had 2 of them written, they were not so bad, except that I had been so whitewashed in the process. Like, I've been pretty seriously involved with anarchist activism for 55 years, let's say.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a single mention of me as an anarchist. So I've been whitewashed to that extent, but then the whole thing was pretty much a whitewash because it said things like pioneering video artist, which means that automatically they use language that I don't use when I describe myself. So, the obituaries immediately contextualize me with normative language. And that's what's going to happen. I mean, that's the future of these things. Like, there's going to be more and more AI obituaries, and there's going to be more AI history in which everything is reduced to what's considered to be safe and proper.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. We programmed Puritanism in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know what time it is, but you might want to check it.
Yeah, I'm getting close. I have time to get this out anyway.
Okay.
I think that's probably what we have time for right now.
Yeah.
And then,
well, this has been good. It's been fine.
Yeah,
so
and we're getting some of them ahead of time here. So. Yeah, and these are some of my favorite. The Buzanko stuff is some of my favorite Revenant stuff. So anyway, so that's what this person's getting. And yeah, I've already, I think, didn't I? I'm pretty sure I weighed that out to make sure it's up to the ounce, but I didn't apparently write down how much it is. I'm gonna have to weigh it in a minute. Got a note to go with it, and then I'm gonna stamp it. Because why not?
What does the stamp say?
This is monOcle-Lash
stamp.
And then I just use the back as a stamp head. And then most of my other stamps are various post-neo phrases that we banter about all the time. Or this was B blank. This is John's phrases.
Yeah. I wish I had known John when he was 20.
Interesting, right?
And I've known him since he was probably in his 40s. But not really, only through correspondence. And it's always weird when you just know somebody as an old person because they haven't been an old person their whole life, but then and then the vision of them as an old person tends to become your dominant image.
Right.
And I have friends that I've known since they were teenagers or whatever, so of course I still am able to remember the teenage facet of who they are.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So, there we go. Actually, before I seal that, I'm going to make sure that this is. Sorry, I got to move here because.
That's right.
Here's my scale. 14 ounces exactly. All right.
Oh wow.
I'll show you more in detail later. There are some zines. So there's one. The really oldest one is a story that was extracted by a fan in the 20s from a early sci-fi magazine that they then kind of rebound. The others are like sci-fi zines from mostly from the 70s. So like Land's Lantern I've got a couple issues of Land's Lantern. There's one which is interesting, was published right after World War II. And it was published, basically what happened was you had American servicemen in England during World War II who met each other, and so you had like sci-fi fans meeting each other during World War II, exchanging information, and it's basically just tons and tons and tons of ads saying, hey, we're looking for these titles, basically facilitating trades and sales of sci-fi across the Atlantic. So that's really, really interesting. Mm-hmm. So that's what that is. All right, now back to the script. So, sorry. So here's some of the stuff I've gotten. I'm going totally off script. I'm just going to go through some shit here. I just got this. This is a good example of ephemera. This is signed by Paul Fort, who's nobody really talks about much anymore, maybe never really talked about much in English. But he was kind of an important link between the symbolist generation and the Paris Dadas and Surrealists. This is an invitation to a charity event put on by his church. And it's an invitation saying, Paul Fort is asking you to, here's a ticket to come to our charity fair on his behalf, basically. And then it even says something to the effect of, if you don't go, please give it to somebody because this is helping the church's charity stuff. Something I would never even think to look for, but it's just $5 and it's signed by Paul Fort. And it's interesting because it's like, okay, this is another aspect of the activity. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a poem, but, and I have a fair amount, I have some letters of his and some things too, but I'll pass that around. I'm just passing things around in random order. We'll see. I'm just gonna go through these in the order they're in. I'm sorry. This is by Félicité de Lamennais. It's called Words of a Believer, and he was a heretical romanticist priest who, as I say, started out as a Catholic priest, but developed this idea that if you actually read the Bible, it presents Jesus as a communist, according to him. And he got into more and more argument with the church, and eventually he was excommunicated. But I believe he refused to stop wearing his frock. He then met in prison with a lot of radical romanticists. So like a couple people might have read some of my stuff on the Anatomist group, probably not, maybe. But he got in touch with a lot of them.
Uh-oh.
See, my script is pissed off that I'm not using it.
Unfriendly reminder.
Yeah. So this is the first edition of Paroles of a Believer, Words of a Believer. I'm speaking half in French and half in English, which is his really influential, radical book from 1833. And this is interesting because it's very much used. It has marginality in it. So if you go through, there are a fair number of places where he's marked on the sides his favorite passages, the original reader.
What's that called?
It's called the Parole de Croyant, or the words of a believer. What's that?
Term that you use?
Oh, marginalia. Yeah. So which.
Yes.
Yeah, I love marginalia, and I've been told that I don't have a real book collection because my books have been used by assholes. I mean, not used by assholes, told by assholes.
That's what I thought you meant, really.
Right? Yeah. It's like I just happened to open on this really cool. This person. So here they just underlined the word a go with 2 question marks. EGAUX, which I don't know what that means offhand. Do you know?
There you go.
I know. Might not be helpful.
I don't know what that.
Yeah. So I wonder if they were. I wonder if the person was just like, "What the fuck is this word?" Or if they were like, "This doesn't make sense." But anyway, yeah. So again, you be careful, but it's still flippable, and there is some cool stuff. I'm gradually working toward where I want to do a chapbook where I only translate the passages that this original reader really liked. I've got a few projects like that where I'm just going through the original reader and be like, this is their version, and I'm going to credit them as co-editors. So I'll pass this one this way. So that's an interesting one.
I feel like if people don't like Marginalia, they think that books are ruined by reading them.
That's kind of the...
And that's, I think, the wrong
Yeah.
take, probably.
That's the thing, yeah. I specifically want books that have been loved and used and have,
My magnifying.
you know... Oh, that's probably... I might have one somewhere, but I'm guessing yours is better than my dollar store ones. Oh yeah, I noticed that just the other day. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me.
Wow.
Oh, is it the...
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Oh my god.
Yeah, what is this?
It's been exactly 90 years to the hour since this event took place.
Oh wow.
I noticed the other day and forgot. Yeah. So
That's weird.
that's
hour.
That's why material history is the best kind of history.
I think if we did the time sense, it would be almost there.
Oh, that's what this is. Okay. So this is one of the... So... This is, again, book by Alphonse Bro, Cervantes in Madrid. It's one of the Buzan Go group. Again, I'm sorry, this may or may not mean anything to anybody, but if I go explain myself, we'll never get out of here. But he was a member of the first Writers' Union in France, and this is a document relating to the establishment. It's not an establishing document, but it's a document written a little bit later about this organization. And at the end of it, you've got a bunch of signatures of all of the writers who were involved in the the leadership of this organization. This is from 18. The fuck number is that? 1804. I hate cursive. I'm gonna send it around in the plastic. I don't mind if you take it out, and look at it carefully. It'll be. Oh, that's a good idea. I mean, if
Make them all do it.
I'm going to aim the
Is this out
camera.
of shot over here, or at least not distracting?
It's fine.
Not
It's
distracting.
Fine. No, it's fine.
All right.
All right, so I am aimed up at you now. If I were you, I would put the books off to the side,
All right.
like maybe here,
Move this.
and then pick a book and put it down here and talk about it.
All right. All right. Am I rolling and just go?
Yeah, you're rolling.
All right. So, here is the ecstatic nerve. Is that about
And that's
right?
your book.
This is my book. This was the first perfect bound book that I did. This was what I received my graduate degree for. I was the only person at Darlington ever, apparently, at least up to when I was there, and they killed the school a few years later. But the first person to take advantage of doing my thesis and creative piece as the same piece. So the ecstatic nerve is almost indescribable.
The title's fairly evocative.
It is, yeah. Almost every word can be read as a pun, which is kind of indicative of the whole kind of text almost. So it's a hybrid of, on the one hand, a hybrid of critical theory, history, historiography, prose poetry, and even little hints of weird fiction in there. And like, I don't know, you could almost say like avant conspiracy theory, and at the same time, about half or more of it is just collaged.
That's why I keep talking.
About
the
half.
cameras are rolling.
Yeah.
And I still have more batteries, so.
And then about at least around half of it is collaged quotations, kind of taken out from all kinds of texts in the history of the avant-garde, and kind of collaged together to evoke a kind of a hallucinatory historical theory.
It looks like a very ambitious book, then.
It is. I was able to actually concentrate at Dartington on just this, and so I actually have trouble reading it now. I go back, I'm like, what the fuck was I on about? So yeah, I think this is still one of my favorite pieces. The historical stuff has been somewhat, I mean, I've done 20 years more research by now, but I think it's still I think it's one of my most substantial pieces and unreadable. So let's see.
It can't be that unreadable.
I mean, maybe not for you, but it's quite dense.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, I'm. So that's the ecstatic nerve. Yeah.
Did it get reviewed?
I don't believe so. I don't think anyone's ever reviewed it. Yeah, but it's let me see. But it was a sheer hell to edit because it has all of these inset boxes, quotes within quotes.
What app did you use? Do you remember?
This is all in LibreOffice or OpenOffice, so like the free version of Microsoft Word.
Okay. OpenOffice was very popular with people who did book layout for a while.
Yeah.
I never used it.
I like it. I think it's actually was better than Word. Now LibreOffice has replaced it. I think they're actually better than Word, although when it gets this complicated, Word has a little, I don't know, better deep coding or something, so it doesn't freak out as much. A lot of illustrations, but like Warren will tell the story. I was trying to, because I finished it back in New Jersey, and just like, he's like, yeah, you'd be like 2 a.m, you'll just hear Olchar going, God fucking damn it, because some, I the thing where like, I've got the image here on the page, and suddenly it shifts down here off into the margin. I'm like, how do I get it back? And it won't let it go back. And I'm like, fuck, okay, it's going to be here. So, yeah. Anyway.
All right, well, let's move on to the next
that.
I'm not trying to rush you, but keep in mind that my batteries are probably going to run out on this at least, because this is my last battery.
Right.
So if you can get through each book in, say, 5 minutes, that's great.
Yeah.
But if you have something important to say, it takes longer than 5 minutes. That's also okay.
Yeah. I'll do these at once because it's basically 4 volumes of one book.
Okay.
One thing. So this was the next thing I did, the Liberté anthology. You can tell I didn't know how to do a cover yet. This is just using their Lulu's online, thing. And then I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to do a proper cover. But this was done, this is an anthology of public domain texts, primary texts covering the history of France from the French Revolution up to the end of the 19th century. And this was done for the first class that I co-taught with Brian Counihan, who's the other half of the Art Rat Studios.
Yeah.
He'd known I'd been doing this toward the beginning of my historical research, but he knew I'd been working on that. He asked me to come in and teach. And long story short, that ballooned into me coming in, co-teaching the class, every class, as a volunteer. And as I was working at the parking garage at the time for money, I had a lot of time. They're like, yeah, you're going to need to bring a book or something. I'm like, sounds like my kind of job. So I was able to actually go through and compile this whole thing. And
it looks like a lot of work.
It was a stupid amount of work.
Can we see all 4 of the covers?
Yeah, so here's the second volume, which is this. You can tell this is the Romanticist volume because it's the biggest. This is the one I was actually really into. Delacroix, and then the other 2 are not the images I would have chosen myself. But third volume.
Who chose the images?
Brian.
Okay.
He's the visual art person, so fair enough. I would have chosen super obscure people no one ever heard of because it's me.
I can't see what that is from here. What is it?
This is Gauguin.
Okay.
And then, actually, this is the 4th volume. I'm sorry. This is the 3rd volume here with the Manet.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that painting before, I think.
Yeah. So that's that. I was just beginning to translate. This only has a few of my early translations, and they're not the best. Most of it's public domain translations, so it's...
Does that French teacher here, does she ever critique you or help you proofread? Or
Yeah, I'll go to her. I'll go to her whenever I have problems or questions, and which is less often now than it used to be.
Yeah.
But Rochelle Brosson. And apparently I've found online there are a number of colleges and universities that have this listed as... This is all on the Internet Archive now, too.
Yeah.
It's listed on a number of colleges' syllabi and things as a resource. So.
Do you sell copies of it?
Not terribly often, but sometimes. I actually sold a lot at AfterMAF. For the first time I've sold a lot of them. So there we go.
Bless the people who come to AfterMAF.
I know, right?
They might be the only people who read my books now. Thomas Slav got a copy of the Pandemic Panic book,
right.
And I just think that's incredible. It's amazing. He might actually read it.
Right. Yep. Yeah, good for AfterMAF. So this is, 2012-13 is when these came out. So then, this is another one I can do as a set. So this, I guess, must have been probably my second one? Second or third, something like that. I don't know. It's an early one. Textus Globulalicus by John M. Bennett.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
It is huge. First time I published Bennett in journals before, I guess. But yes, it's 3 volumes of poems that he was working on at the time. There's the first one. This was not nearly as hard to edit. That's good. Let's see. First one has... Who is this cover? First one has an introduction by Bob Brukel. Cover by C. Mehrl-Bennett. There you go. Makes sense. These all came out together, but volume 2, cover by Bennett and I think Music Master, looks like, maybe. Yep. And I did the introduction to this volume. And then these are all out of order. That's volume 3. Volume 2, cover by the Blaster.
Oh, let me see that one. Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah. And who did they? And Jim Leftwich did the introduction to this one. Yeah. Ackerman, I was in touch with Ackerman for several years, but he apparently thought the whole time I was a pseudonym of Jim Leftwich. He never knew I was a real person.
Oh, that's hilarious. Because, of course, Blaster used so many pseudonyms, and I'm sure that a large portion of the people who corresponded with him were confused by it.
Yeah, right, yeah. Here's another letter. I've got all my letters together here. This is by a female poet who I have not heard of and still need to look into. Or I'm sorry, not a poet, a pianist named Hosanna Cavell. But this is a letter that she wrote to Victor Hugo, who is living in exile for his opposition to the totalitarian regime of Napoleon III. And he'd written a poem called Art and the People. And this is her asking him permission to put it into music, which is pretty risky at this time for her to be putting into music, because Victor Hugo was kind of enemy number one. Like, Napoleon III tried to have him murdered when he took over, because Hugo had such a huge influence. And Hugo was a senator at the time and was one of the people organizing the resistance to the coup d'etat and barely made it out of the country alive. So pretty ballsy on her behalf. This is 1851, which is basically the year that Napoleon III completely consolidated. It's like what will be in next year. So that's what this is.
yeah, so I will pass that around. I don't know. I'm trying not to over talk, but that's what I do. 2010, same year as this other one. So this is the avant-garde, childhood and family and the culture of the avant-garde. So,
oh, interesting.
yeah, I kind of wanted to just kind of a close look at how. At some point, I'd like to do one about how avant-gardists have raised their families. This is more focused on what the childhoods of various avant-gardists were.
Oh, okay. I thought that you meant the other thing when you read that.
Yeah, I would like to do a follow-up that looked at that, actually.
Yeah,
well, there's a little bit of that in here, but the emphasis is more on people's, which is partly just what tends to be talked about more in the biographies and things like that. This is another one that it's just all quotations. So I just went through my library, basically went through every book and looked to see anything I could find about the childhood or like the family life of everybody, and then collaged them together, similarly to how I'd done on the ecstatic nerve. Mm-hmm. So, and this is coming out of a big thing, I guess now, but especially then, trying to move away from people using avant-garde as an adjective that means weird art, and trying to actually focus on this is a counterculture and a subculture, and whatever art is being done is serving this function. Mm-hmm. And so trying to kind of look at aspects of the avant-garde that are not the aesthetic and say, kind of what are the correlations and the unities and the variations, looking at it more anthropologically than through an art history or literary history lens.
Should people buy that one too, or I would expect that to be one of the least popular.
I not for a while, but when it came out, there was some interest in it. Also, one thing with print on demand is I'm not as aware of what people are buying as with the chat books. The chat books, I'm so intimately involved with sending them out to some of this stuff, and I have to look and be like, oh, what do you know? But yeah, this kind of had its heyday where it was having huge sales. I would sell 1, 2, 3 a year.
That for me is good.
But now it's moved down on the list, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is one I would really like to do a follow up on this actually.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we don't know what this stuff is.
Do you know now, though?
Yes,
Have I helped? Really? Let's be honest.
No, we know you're lying about everything.
So this is this person you've never heard of who hung out with this other person you've never heard of, part of this movement you've never heard of, which is similar to this other movement that you've not heard of.
Therefore, I can say anything I want.
This is by a cool person here.
True.
No, this is actually one of the gems of my collection, which I owe to Warren.
What?
So Philo Teonetti, some of you might recognize that name. He's like one of my favorite colors. Thank you. I published a chapbook of his stuff about a year ago, maybe a little bit more. It's his first book in English. Founding member of the Buzango. He, building on the You Go thing, he lost his job because he was there was a revival of the Battle of the play Hernani under Napoleon III, and Hernani was kind of the defining event of the French Romanticist movement. It was basically this very meticulously planned series of theatrical riots that took place over about 2 or 3 months, and very meticulously planned, much more than historians pay attention to. The evidence is right there, but they don't want to look at it. So anyway, so this was a huge thing in the avant-garde, in the French avant-garde. Victor Hugo, again, by this point, is like persona non grata to the regime, and all of the press is under the control. Like every newspaper in the country has one of Napoleon III's goons, like watching everything, right? Philo Teonetti and his friend Petrus Borel, who I also would like to pretend people recognize the name of, were the only people in France who wrote positive reviews of Hernani. And to write a positive review of Hernani was basically like a fuck you to the regime. So Onetti wrote this very glowing review, and he went about it because the classicists, who were the arch nemesis of the Romanticists, basically tanked the production by doing exactly what the Romanticists had done in the 30s. They planted people in all the right places to make sure that the thing got booed down, and that they could sway all the bourgeois who were just in there being like, I don't know, should I like this play or not? Oh, I guess not.
Yeah.
Right. So Onetti is like, look, motherfuckers, I know how to do this, and he lays out exactly how this thing happened. They literally stopped the press to avoid printing his review. Literally, it was in print, and the government censor was like, fucking no. And it was nixed from the magazine, not by the theatrical director, but by the political director of the newspaper. So this is Onetti's resignation letter. He never published again after this letter was written, because he refused to publish. He was told, if you publish this positive review, you will never be published again. We will make sure. And he was like, fuck off then. And that's what this letter is. So of all the letters I have, this is the one that actually I'm like, this dude was crying when he wrote this letter. Like, he was like, this was literary suicide, you know. So yeah, and this was a gift. Yeah.
Well, Olchar,
yeah.
That word ego, I think it means. I think it's an adjective, means equal.
I was thinking I wanted to read it as equal, but then I was like, wait, it's not egalite.
No, it's a different
form of it.
Yeah,
okay.
Different things are different. Two things are the same. This shows ego.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So I was close in my imagining, because what it meant.
Yeah, it's a distinction between two meanings of equal in English.
Right. Okay, interesting. So yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I'll have to take a closer look at that sentence at some point and see what it was that the guy was either confused about or disagreeing with.
Here we go. You have reviewed this one. I think you're the only person who have reviewed this one.
Review of the Olchar E. Lindsann edited Anti-Prophecies by Tentatively A Convenience, January 29th to 31st, 2025. The subtitle of this is A Codex of Post-Neo-Absurdist Prophecy Poems, A. Da, 86 to 94. The title page takes this further by informing us that there are prophecies from Bradley Criss, Olchar E. Lindsann, Jeff Noss, Jim Leftwich, Megan Blofus, Aaron Andrews, Bruno Franklin, the Montana PNA Group, and other anonymous figures. Page 1. Note that on the same page we've gone from anti-prophecies to post-neo-absurdist prophecy poems to prophecies. Perhaps, just perhaps, these writers aren't all on the same page after all. I can relate. I instigated and curated and published a CD compilation under the conceptual umbrella of A Musical Music, A Theatrical Theater, and included 10 individuals and groups. In some sense, most of them nudged the perimeter of being intermedia in Dick Higgins' sense, or being somehow out there without really qualifying as what I was trying for. The results were still interesting somehow, and I think the title context helps get listeners to try to think of the works in a somewhat new way. In Olchar's introductory on prophecy and anti-prophecy, he states, Anti-prophecies have proliferated within the post-neo community, appearing scattered and piecemeal in a number of forms and modes in journals, anthologies, books, exhibitions, and larger pieces. The anti-prophecy has become an enduring post-neo microform, and like the meat poem, the list poem, the slintet, the profanity poem, the anti-manifesto, the talismanic word, and many others, it has developed into a kind of hermetic discourse of its own, around which is organized a discrete micro-community of post-neo anti-prophets. More simply put, prophecy does not attempt to tell us the future.
Rather, it exhorts us to think toward it. Now that's an interesting idea, don't you think? In this context, one might consider the seminal texts which have come to be known within PNA as the Montana Prophecies. In A.Da. 87 AD 2003, Bradley Criss and later other post-neos began receiving erratic and intermittent packets of handwritten prophecies, always without return address, posted from various places in Montana. Page 8. I smell a bit of mythologizing here. In fact, I would dare to suggest that the recipients knew these MPs to have originated from a friend ordinarily in Roanoke. At least I would if it weren't for those tentacle sucker smears on the envelopes. As these verbal and grammatical tendencies revealed themselves within the microform, one writer or another would adopt them when composing prophecies, so that the anti-prophecy is one social space in which several individuals' technique and sensibilities have come into new relationships with each other in the stylistic parallel of neoist heteronyms. Page 13. The anti-prophecies proper section begins. But a hope shall survive, fostered by those of the less than Catholic faith of proto-post-neo-absurdism. The year shall be 1999, and the deliverers shall descend chiefly from the north, and they shall be called the post-neo-absurdists. By Bruno Franklin, November 1925, page 17. I got excited there for a moment. Who is Bruno Franklin? Alas, I conflated him with this person. Neoism as a name for a different context was coined in 1914 by the American satirist Franklin P. Adams as a parody of modern arts. But wasn't Bruno Franklin Adams one of the early U.S. presidents, or that guy who wrote Pear Richard's Almanac? I always have a hard time reading handwriting, so excuse me if I misquote the following Montana Group communique. I saw a woman in half on a bed built of teeth and tongues. The pillow was breathing, and soft words it unantied. Under, sunder, my boat I hear herm. Under, sunder, on the horse I saw. They ride tide-high. Always underneath the harem and the horse. The horse is dead. The horse swallowed the earth. Page 21. Take that. As if that weren't enough, Olchar has to stick the horse's foot in his mouth so he can spit it out again. It is said that the most terrible thing about the earth-belly horse-toothed god is that everyone knows where it is going. It roams mercilessly and inexorably over the land, trampling everything underfoot, and spreading horror everywhere it goes. Page 22. But let's read more from the Montana groups, shall we? The sun soins into itself. 3 million days of darkness will arrive under the hooves of a rotted earth-belly horse. We shall choke on the mane. O horse god, your rotted tongue brings forth sweet-worded scent that drapes the world in darkness, a night cloak for our conscious mind. We are bringing an end to all of this. 10,000 tongues praying means nothing now. We shall chew on the hearts anew with the words of the dying life horse god. Make peace with the death of the new. Take comfort within the rotted earth belly, for it lies but steps in front of you. Page 34. It's at this point that a glove slaps across the cheek of the Montana group, and Olchar provides us with a real anti-prophecy. His road was paved with teeth. Vion, a fingernail unpeeled, anti-vion, an anti-peeled from fingernails, the peel of fingernail, anti-un, page 43. Locus solus, anyone? More from Olchar. O great and rotted earth-belly horse-tooth god, come spraying from your hooves the death where words may find their roots. pound heads of placid women and proud men into the earth, that all may be reversed and worms sing lightly in the sky. Page 56. Is that what that is? Split tongues, the still birth of the ante, and unprophecy. Barb. Page 61. Hero saying, a tongue let loose the ante. Moonpillar Sunpith says, in ante the unanit. Itna nuet. Swallop Nuet, page 62, by Bradley Crisp, page 67. This book reaches for the medium gray side of the moon and gives birth to the innards only of a golf ball. Esro ad luck ui.
I totally don't know what order any of these shits came out in. This came out in 2005, or 5 years before that. Anti-Prophecies, a codex of post-Neo Absurdist prophecy poems, ADA 86 to 94.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yep. So this is a bunch of stuff. Most of these are written in like the Ohio post-Neo Absurdist phase. So me and 8 people know what the fuck that means.
Yeah.
Before I went out to England, basically, with the kind of first phase of our group activity as an avant-garde node.
Where were you based then?
Columbus, Ohio.
Uh-huh.
And so, you know, one of the things that kind of emerged, kind of like Neoism, a lot of what was happening was just these kind of catchphrases or ideas and motifs that just became really densely circulated and shared, you know, among that group. And if you're not into it, if you're not a part of it, you're not going to necessarily pick up on a lot of it.
Yeah.
So a part of that were these anti-prophecies that we would write or would receive mysteriously from faraway places, with this kind of whole canon of, you know, like the Earth Belly Horse-Tooth God, who had played a big role in the passage from Arthur Dies that I performed Saturday, comes from this whole body of work. The hermaphroditic homunculus is another one, and you know, all of these kinds of things. So this was, kind of, I think, the first post-Neo Absurdist anthology. And this was published a little bit later, but they were all a little bit older texts when that came out. And it's got a little essay on prophecy by me in the beginning and the front. Not one of the more popular ones. Let me see. All right, so I got a couple things here by.
Man, this is hard to read.
It is, yeah. Plus, it's it's got the red. Obviously, the actual letter is not red, but it's. Yeah, I haven't gone through and translated it yet, which I need to do. So these are a couple books by a guy named LeConte de Lille. That was basically his pseudonym. It's not a first and last name. He was the founder of what's called the Parnassian movement, which gets a lot of. If you read any English language text that actually mentions Parnassianism, they'll say that it was an apolitical, reactionary, conservative reaction against Romanticism, which tells me that nobody writing about it in English has looked at anything that they did. Because really what it was, first off, it was a bunch of Romanticists who founded it. Théophile Gautier, who was like the underground romantic poet, was like the mentor of the people who started this and published in it. So it was not anti-romanticist, but it was moving on from a lot of what Romanticism did. And basically one thing about the Parnassians was that they were really focusing in on the formal aspects of poetry. And so really I think you can look at certain aspects of the Parnassians as laying the groundwork for a lot of contemporary avant-garde stuff. And that they're really looking at form and how form relates to all kinds of, you know, psychological and cultural things.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
It really is. I want to do a Parnassian anthology because there's really a lot of interest, and it's very diverse actually. When you actually go through the Parnassian contemporary anthologies, it's immensely diverse, and a lot of it is very political. And de Lille himself, I just published recently a little zine by him called Harmonian Eclogue, which somebody may have picked up at AfterMAF.
But he was also a Fourierist socialist, and he edited a Fourierist socialist magazine, which is over
We're talking about Charles
here, the
Fourier, right?
Phalange. What's that?
We're talking about Charles Fourier, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, not the
Well,
mathematician.
here's a little
Yeah.
here's a little show and tell. If you don't mind my interpolating a little show and tell
I
here.
love Fourier.
Well,
Oh.
does anybody know what the Archibras is?
No.
No.
Fourier said that if you followed his teachings for 20 generations, that you'd grow a tail
Yes.
with a hand on the end of it with an eyeball in the middle.
The coolest socialist in the world.
So this
I've
is
forgotten about that.
this is
That's
my
brilliant.
So good.
this is my tattoo of a
That is awesome.
of an Archibras, but it's a six-fingered Archibras, and the hand is opening and closing, and the eye is winking at you.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about that is, did you see it? Yeah. Okay. Is that people who thought that Fourier was great didn't really want to talk about the Archibras because it was so obviously crazy. So I had to get it tattooed on me. You know?
You're like, I'm committed.
So why do they go to the Lemonade Sea? That's way creepier and weird.
Right?
What's the Lemonade Sea?
That's usually how they smear Fourier.
Yeah.
Is that, oh, he thought the sea would turn into lemonade. What
Oh,
Because
wow.
after the Arch of the Northern Alliance, the polar caps will melt, which will be due
If
to
only. I
global
love
warming.
lemonade.
That's refreshing, honestly.
Fourier is amazing. I love Fourier. Well, actually, there was one of the MAFs. Tomislav and I did an hour-and-a-half lecture on Fourier, explaining the whole system. And I still want to finish talking about Delille, but actually, what you were saying, this is the book that did the thing you're talking about. So I'm going to skip through this. This was the first English language presentation of Fourier's system. And this is the main inspiration for the Transcendentalists' utopian colony, which the name flew out of my head just now when I needed it. But at any rate, so this is 1840, Social Destiny of Man, or Association and Reorganization of Industry by Alfred Brisbane. And coming out of this book, you had a ton, like a score or more of Fourierist colonies springing up all over, just mainly from New York and the Midwest. And this is exactly, he wrote out all of the cool shit, like you were talking about. So it doesn't have this, it does not have a lemonade ocean, it just has the stuff that wouldn't scare... It took the lunatic out of the fringe.
I learned about the Archibras from reading Jarry. That was the first time I came across it.
That makes sense. I think for me it was Breton's Anthology of Black Humor, I think.
And he wrote an ode to Charles Fourier too.
Yes, which I
Breton
want to
did.
read, but it's like $60 on eBay.
Oh, really?
It's hard to find, yeah.
Well, I have a paperback copy that probably cost me $3 or
That
whatever,
sounds
but that
right.
was when
Right.
it came out.
Right. So I'll pass this around because that directly relates to that. So I'm gonna, and this also at one point it belonged to somebody named A.H. Trago. I haven't been able to find anything, but it says private library and it has a call number, which tells me a lot about this dude. Like his private library uses call numbers. Okay. And then it went to
Dewey Decimal or
I'm not sure. Well, it might be Dewey Decimal. I don't know the Dewey Decimal system well enough, but but that's my guess because there's also, it later ended up with the university library and it's a very close number, so I'm guessing it's Dewey Decimal.
But aren't there supposed to be 3 alphabetical letters
Dewey
first?
Decimal
Okay,
or
it's something related, but not quite there.
else. Not Library of Congress.
No, yeah, I don't know.
Maybe he wrote his own system.
What's that?
And came up with his own system.
That may be. That's what I would have done. And then from him, it went on to a married pair of professors, apparently at the University of North Dakota, and then they donated it to the Special Collections Library, who apparently had 4 copies, and this was the 4th one, which I'm guessing is why I now own it.
That's why they discarded it.
Exactly. But then the other interesting thing about it is that it's clearly been used a lot, and I guarantee none of these previous owners used it this way. Like the guy who has a call number for his private library is not spilling coffee on this book. And certainly the Special Collections Library. So I think it had a really interesting life before it ended up with the people I have
It's
specifically.
probably got absinthe stains in it.
I'm going to assume.
Give it a big woof.
It also has some really cool engravings inside, which I've been seeing online for a long time, but I'm like, oh, this is where they came from. So I'll pass that around. I don't remember which way it went last.
Yeah, roll a tree.
Okay. Back to LeConte Lil. So anyway, Fourierist. I'll just pass this around. This is Poems Antique. It's Fourierist, but most you would not know his stuff as Fourierist unless you really know Fouillé and then kind of meditate on the poems. Like none of them mention politics, which is why I think. But this he considered this to be a Fourierist collection, and so it's all highly emblematic. You know, like I just translated a poem of his about elephants. That doesn't seem to have anything to do with Fouillé, unless you've read enough Fouillé that you know about his theory of anti-animals and the anti-elephant, which will one day develop and will be the kind of elephant that we can use for cars and things like that. I love Fouillé. And then this is, I'll pass these around together. This is a little chapbook that he published during the Siege of Paris. And it's an occasional piece. That's the exact date that it was read out at the National Theater as Paris was being bombed by the Germans. This came out right before the Commune took over the resistance. And I believe he supported the Commune, but I'm not quite 100% on that. A lot of leftists did not support the Commune when it happened, for various reasons. But so I'll pass these around. These are really. This is published on Alphonse Lemaire, who was the main Parnassian and Bohemian publisher, which again I think automatically clears out this idea that the Parnassians were like ivory tower, because they were publishing along with comedians, you know, in cabarets, you know. So this should be one of the more popular ones. Babbage's Disease by Edwin Birch. Edwin Birch. I think I can let this out. Also, David Barris Edwards, who's one of my main my closest collaborator in the UK, kind of formulating the British post-neo group. David or Edwin Birch came out of the British alternative comedy tradition and came into the avant-garde through British alt comedy, which is a pretty fun. So, you know, kind of very much coming out of like the nonsense tradition. And so Babbage's Disease is a historical novel, a biography of Charles Babbage, who invented the first computer in the 19th century. A good idea of the accuracy of the novel is that the first scene is Charles Babbage coughing up a small two-dimensional cartoon man with a Dutch accent, who starts asking him about computers, and he just gets more and more aggravated, and then it becomes this intensely grotesque kind of disease. He's hacking up all kinds of things, and this little cartoon man running his brilliant book, which should really be.
Yeah, it sounds
this
like
should
fun.
be a bestseller for me.
Well, especially considering that people know who Babbage is for the most part.
Yeah, and you can learn something.
There was the book The Difference Engine that was by the two.
The steampunk, the Sterling, and
Although, yeah, not. It is a steampunk novel, I would guess,
Sterling,
but it's not Sterling.
okay, I can't remember.
Or no, it is Sterling.
Okay.
Sterling and the famous guy whose name I'm forgetting at the
Me
moment.
too, and I've read part of it. It's one of those books I'm in the middle of.
Yeah, it's not bad. It was actually one of my favorites because I'm not.
I like
Cyberpunk is what generally both of them are associated with.
Right.
But steampunk applies to that particular novel.
Right. Yeah.
So the guy who wrote Neuromancer was his collaborator.
Charles Gibson, or not Charles
Gibson. William Gibson.
There
we go.
We got to it.
Between the two of us, we would get to it eventually.
Right.
I mean, that's somebody who, both of those guys are so famous that you would think that we would have them on the tip of our tongues.
We don't. Let's
exactly.
assume.
I'm not actually a big fan of either of those guys as
I'm
writers,
not either,
but I like
honestly.
the difference engine.
There's aspects. Part of me really likes to nerd out on the difference engine. A part of me finds the style a little bit hard to get through. But then other times I like, and it very much depends on my mood.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So I just want to read this now. That's how much I like it. I don't have time for that. This is a little later piece. This is a book of Aragon's, the Surrealist Aragon's poetry that he published as a member of the French Resistance. So these are all poems that were originally published and illegally distributed. And this is English translation by Malcolm Cowley and Hannah Josephson. Cowley did a lot of the early Dada translations.
Yeah.
I'm not the hugest fan of his translations, but but he made it available. And so this came out in 1945. So this is kind of, yeah, I expect the first, this is the second printing of the first edition of that. So throw that around. This is another later one. Ritual, a book of primitive rites and events by Jerome Rothenberg, published on Something Else Press. So
Well, it's a great bear pamphlet.
it is, yes. And I was like, holy shit, and it's Rothenberg. And one thing I found, so that it's both like Great Bear is very important Fluxus, I guess, publisher. I guess it's a line. I guess it's like a sub-imprint, I guess, I think, of Something Else Press. So published by Emmett Williams, and then it also, with Rothenberg, this is one of the early ethnopoetics texts, which is the idea of rethinking non-Western poetry and kind of basically making the point that a lot of avant-garde poetry is trying to reclaim poetic functions which European poetry has suppressed for hundreds of years, and reapproaching how to learn from non-Western poetry through extended poetic technique, I guess would be the simplest way I could put it. And Rothenberg is huge, like, I have a lot of Rothenberg in here, as an editor. So it's really interesting to me, this kind of conjunction of ethnopoetics and Fluxus. So I'll pass that around. Here's one I was real happy to do, Per Ubu's Almanac.
Which I also reviewed.
I don't know if I
Yeah, you saw the
see
review.
that. Okay, I've
Yeah.
forgotten. Yeah, so...
Because I think I might have said some things in that you didn't know. But maybe not.
See, that's why I blocked it out.
Yeah.
I'll have to look it up and reread it.
Yeah.
Refresh
Yeah,
myself.
that might not be true, but I think that I at least had some substantial knowledge about the almanac, and therefore could say something fairly intelligent about it.
Right. And this was translated by Amy Oliver, another person I've worked with quite closely, with British Post Neo. Another person who comes out of the comedy tradition, which I thought was a nice thing to be translating this, to be coming at it. And there are certain things in here where you can tell it's translated by a comedian and not by some
Not by
other
an
kind
academic.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the only Shari I've published so far.
Well, it's obscure enough to be able to be something that you can provide a service with.
Exactly, right. Yeah, it was, interesting. It was something Atlas Press had not done. When I got into touch with Alistair Broachy years later, I sent him a copy rather sheepishly, because it's Alistair fucking Broachy, who to me is a legend. Also, intensely nice man. But yeah, I sent him this, and then found out that Atlas was working on their own edition of it, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And he really liked it, and he was like, "I think it'll be great to have two editions out of this," And then he passed away before they finished it. So it's
Really, what
still
year
a good
did he
thing.
pass away?
I think 2 years ago. I want to say, I think 2 years ago. The most recent issue of Revenance, I have a tribute to him in there. So it is good that we published it, because that didn't end up happening, and Atlas Press is closed now. Which
Is it really?
It is.
So they're not putting out
Really sad
anything.
to me, because Atlas Press, Atlas Press is one of my main inspirations for all of this, especially
Yeah,
the
of course.
Revenant Editions line.
They were great.
It's If the regular monOcle-Lashes want to be Luna Basante, then
Revenant Editions is wannabe Atlas Press. I've gotten in touch with Malcolm Green since, who's also, I mean, a great artist in his own right, and is also really, really nice, personable guy. So, and then I think this is the last one I have specifically pulled, but I'll have to look at my script. There's probably stuff I meant to pull and haven't yet. This kind of goes along with the Fourierist thing. This is a book, what's it called? The Communistic Societies of the United States, from Personal Visit and Observation. Oh, this is so fucking cool. This is one of two books that I had a student who wrote on Fourier this year. This is Miles. And like he kept finding these sources. I'm like, oh, that looks like a cool fucking source that I get on eBay, and I'm like, motherfucker, your essay's costing me $80. So this is by a journalist who was not himself a socialist, but was open-minded and went all over the country visiting intentional communities in the 1870s, interviewing people, writing like maybe 10, 15-page double-column descriptions of life there with illustrations that he drew on site. And so this is, and you know, it's got, you know, the Shakers, the Economists, Ebenezers or Amana, Inspirationists, the Zoarites, the Oneida Perfectionists, who are over there, the Icarians, who are also interesting, Bethel, Aurora, and other communes. And it was owned by a guy named Charles, I believe it's Remus May. I haven't been able to find anything about him. He signed it October 1915, but he also left this little sheet giving his little miniature review. And there is some marginalia. So what I can gather is he seems to have been a progressive, like leftist Christian, who seems to have been very interested in this stuff, but kind of ambivalent, because there are a lot of things. I remember what this says here.
Too much free love, for one thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's that kind of thing. He says, if a group of good people has a good influence on us, why not? I hate fucking cursive. Why not something communication with the all good, God? This depends on one mental idea of God. I have seen some people who something fucking cursive, something communication with their God, who were not any better than their neighbors. Is God but a reflection of our own stirring, maybe, or ideal? The God of the Testament is a positive deity whom we should imitate, not something for ourselves or something to that effect.
Well, we do imitate it by creating our own worlds.
They tell him, not me. So it's both an awesome book, but also I'm like, okay, you can actually have an argument with this guy. He's left enough of his ideas that we can be like, no, man, come on. So I love that shit. But yeah, I'll pass it this way because you don't have something right now. If I could only find somebody who wants to translate German.
That would open up a whole new area for you.
It would. Everybody thinks I'm like a huge francophone. It's like, no, I can only learn so many languages. I'd love to have more Spanish stuff, more German stuff.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of Vladimir Bilik, a Ukrainian poet. He's done a couple translations of Ukrainian and Russian stuff, which I've been able to do, which is really nice. Anyway, so here's the Revenance Omnibus, Volume 1. Revenance is my journal dedicated to early avant-garde stuff, 19th century through Dada Surrealism. All right. So Revenance Omnibus. This is the first 5 issues of Revenance, which is my journal that focuses on mostly 19th and early 20th century counterculture, a little bit of 18th century. So yeah, one of my 2 main periodicals. So yeah, this is just the first 5 issues, just a pure facsimile copy, which was a huge pain in the balls because I wanted it to be a proper omnibus, which would start the pagination over with each issue as it was done, and as all of the
tables of contents are, and I did the whole table of contents in the beginning with that, and then they refused to distribute it because they said they were looking after their quality. And I was like, well, if you don't understand what an omnibus is, then I don't think you have a right to talk about registering bibliographic quality, and I've read, I know what kinds of shit you publish on KDP, so shut the fuck up. Anyway, this is what got me back on Lulu.
I've had similar problems with
This is what got me back on Lulu after KDP.
Yeah.
But I still had to go through, repaginate the entire fucking thing. Anyway, so it's just the first 5 issues. I'm currently in. The other thing is it does have an index. I'm currently finishing up the next volume, which will be 6 through 5, with a greatly expanded index, which
6 through 5 or 6 through 10?
I'm sorry, 6 through 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. With a hugely expanded index with a lot more entries. And then I'm also including in there a like bonus essay that was published in David Teague's No Quarter magazine about a year ago about the Avatomists, which would have gone into Revenance, except I wanted to publish it with Teague. But it makes a lot of sense with this. So that's what that is. I'm going to see if there's anything else that... Oh, okay. No, yeah. Well, okay. It mentioned the Icarians on there. I don't remember if I had this last year. I don't think so.
Yeah, let's do it. She hasn't seen it.
So the Icarian movement was a socialist movement that I would not have wanted to be part of. It was like almost like the anti-Fourierist version. Like it was very kind of planned, squelching. The idea was like, individual, that...
But they had no sea of lemonade. So
I know, yeah. I'm like, why would I want to do
What good are
this?
they?
Everybody has to wear the same clothing. Everybody, it's like absolute sameness is the idea. It's like individuality is the problem that keeps us from being together, right? So I'm not a fan of them personally, but they're interesting. It started with a utopian novel, which has never been translated to English, but I assume is incredibly dull.
What's the original language?
French.
Okay, but it was published in the United States?
It was published in France, but the actual attempt to put it into practice was in the United States. So basically, Cabet, who wrote this, put together an intentional community of Frenchmen. They bought some land in Texas that they were told was going to be awesome. So probably would be. They came over to Texas and they were like, oh, it's like half swamp and half land you can't grow anything on. Also, maybe we should have brought some farmers. But we just brought people who read a lot of socialist newsletters.
That's like a mistake that's made by everybody.
Over and over.
The socialists and the Nazis, they all do the same thing.
Yeah. But they did manage. So they did manage to have the string of colonies that lasted for about a generation and a half. And eventually they split, and they had 2 different versions because the young ones were more radical than the old ones, and all of this stuff. But at any rate, this is an early edition. I think it's the first edition of the Voyage of Icary to Icaria. Very beat up. I suspect this may have belonged to somebody in one of those, because this also has marginalia. And a lot of the marginalias, to me, seems to be people not quite being sure about the French, which makes me just hypothesize it may have been owned or written in by one of the children who were born in the Icarian community, but did not grow up with French. But I don't really know. But what first attracted me was just this like concrete poetry cover that they've got. And I was like, that thing looks awesome! And then I found out more, and I was like, it's very interesting.
A little scary.
But yeah, I'm like, not my style.
What's it based on? Like Raymond DeLull or somebody like that, or? I mean, it looks just from here, from the fraction of a second that I saw it, that it's based on a previous system. That's why I'm asking.
I don't know. It drew on Saint Simonianism quite a bit, and I'm not really sure. I haven't looked into. Let me put it this way: all of this information about it is in French and hard to get to, and I haven't had time to really delve much more into it. And I haven't been able to read the whole thing to be able to identify influences.
I've never heard of them, and therefore the name immediately caught my attention and made me interested.
It's pretty interesting, yeah. And I do have a book
a book on American utopias that has about a maybe 20-page article about them, which is pretty much all I know.
But any place with a dress code immediately has to go.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, come on. I don't think it was that cool a dress code. I'm not really sure. But,
I mean, maybe if all the crotches had to be cut out or something, or.
Star Trek Next Generation.
this is issue 5 of Synapse, which is my contemporary avant-garde journal, my main one. This is the only one that was published as perfect bound, and basically there was just something like a 3-year gap between issues, and I had so much stuff that it needed to be perfect bound.
Yeah.
But this is too expensive to really trade or give away with impunity, so I've gone back to the chapbook format for that for the most part. Yeah, so that's what that is. Yeah, there we go. What's that from? 2021. This is my children's book.
Oh, funny. Did you write that one?
I did.
Uh-huh.
And the way that it is laid out is that, so basically the idea is that it's a pre-reading book. So each page basically is looking, I just have a few letristic motifs, some pictures of things that begin with that. But the idea is that the kid can read along, because all they need to do is practice being like, so it's just like sounds babies can make, but they're learning to connect a sound to a page, right? And then the first half are all sounds that you do not need teeth to make, and then the second half are sounds you need teeth to make, so we can grow with the kid. And the kids I've given it to, the parents all say that it's been the kids' favorite book at points in their development. So apparently it's a good children's book, I guess. So it was fun to make. It's expensive, of course, because it has to be full color and thick enough that a kid won't immediately destroy it. But
And then there are those books that are printed on cardboard. So
right, which would be ideal, but there's no way I'm doing that on print on demand. So
Yeah.
That would be the ideal way, though.
Was that done through Lulu?
Yeah. When it looks pretty nice. The printing looks pretty nice. So, yeah. One that I would expect to sell more than it does, actually. But normally kids' books are the one thing that'll sell. But what you gonna do? Looking Backward by Edward Bellamy. Somebody should have heard of that.
Yeah.
and there's a spin-off of it by Mac Reynolds, the science fiction writer.
I think I've heard that there was, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, well, Mac Reynolds is one of my favorite sci-fi writers. I'm not going to...
I'm guessing it was a better novel than this.
In
terms of like having plot and characters.
That's just really a dry thing
This sure is.
that presents the ideas without bothering to try to make it interesting to people in any way.
Right.
Whereas Mac Reynolds is actually really funny and entertaining and so forth and so on. So you might want to check out Mac Reynolds sometime.
I may, yeah. Because, it is absolutely... Interestingly, one of the best-selling books in American history. I think at the time it was the best-selling book other than the Bible and Uncle Tom's Cabin, I think.
And there were even, I think, Bellamy societies.
There were Bellamy societies. It almost became a political movement. So it was, people really latched onto it. And I think what it was is he basically presents a scenario in which, and this was written in 1887. So like at the height of like the Gilded Age. And the idea he presents is that basically monopoly capitalism will one day be switched into a state-run economy, and we can therefore achieve a socialist society without a revolution.
But they broke everything.
Which in 1887 seemed like a pretty...
They did it bad.
Yeah, I feel like
that's back when
Elon Musk could have a very specific misreading of this.
That's back when they thought that being rich still made you a little bit smart, kind of, and that maybe to make a communist utopia, we should just let the rich people do what they naturally will, which is give all their money away. That's really nice as an idea.
Charles Ives, the composer, was also an insurance salesman, and he had an idea, which was that if you made over $5 million a year, you would give all of that money to create educational institutions. So it's kind of like Ives' idea was an outgrowth of things like this.
Right.
And needless to say, the other insurance people just didn't go along with that for some reason. I don't know why,
Weird
but
how that happens. Yeah. So
That's annoying though, because when insurance was invented in America, it was farmers. If you got a bunch of farmers together
Right.
and said you should be able to have a max amount of money that you sell meat for, those insurance people, they would have said yes.
yeah.
They would have
with
been
the
like,
progressive movement.
Yeah, that's
people,
kind of-
yeah.
because he was selling insurance. That's a part of it.
So this is a second edition, because the first edition, I mean, it's maybe $10,000 or something. This isn't that obscure, so I was pretty excited to find this. This apparently
That's why you need a time machine.
You
Just go back to those
Yeah,
flea market sales, and you're like, a penny? I don't know if I can afford that.
Yeah. There must have been a time when every version of a thrift shop had 8 of these things. Right?
Yeah.
But so I'll pass that around, and I believe that is pretty much all that I had specifically to talk about here, really.
This is Coma Shopped Operative by A.G. Davis. So A.G., as you know, is a sound poet, but also a textual poet. This is textual poetry, which is actually how I first encountered him. I think in Odoliths, I want to say.
Yeah, he used to be published in there.
Yeah.
He and I both
Almost everybody
ended up
was.
being censored from it. And
I remember you mentioning that. I didn't know
Yeah.
that about him.
I don't remember what his particular problem was,
Yeah.
but he stopped. I stopped submitting
I remember you
because
talking
I
about
was
that.
angry that he rejected something of mine.
Right, which I ended
One-
up printing without even realizing that it would be offensive.
Well, you have the better attitude as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
I was like, wait, that was what he rejected? No, I like Mark a lot.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it was a great magazine.
Yeah. Oh, I
Expensive
really
for
miss
contributors
Odoliths.
if you wanted a copy of it. Which,
True, especially if you did anything in color. I have all the black and white, but I can't afford any of the color things. But I miss that magazine. That was but anyway, yeah. So this is a long text by A.G. Very for me, it has a kind of aspects of Artaud, aspects of I don't know what other landmarks to put on it, but it's an interesting text. It moves back and forth between kind of non-discursive poetry and hints of almost like cyberpunk stuff and philosophy and kind of nihilistic stuff and all kinds of things. This is a weird one. There was a weird troll where AG had published this very briefly for less than a day, and then the publisher yanked it with this weird something like, this is so brilliant, I can't allow it to see the light of day, or some shit, I don't even know. And then the guy kept, like, after I put it up, I released it, and the guy emailed me and threatened to sue me for, like, stealing the thing, even though he told AG he wasn't going, and it was this whole fucking weird thing, and apparently the guy's a ward of the state in England, again, I don't know. And eventually, and it was just absolute bullshit, because this is AG's poem. Sorry, dude.
yeah.
You don't.
I'm sure he didn't have some sort of huge contract.
Yeah, this is micropress. Yeah. And it's like, what are you suing me for? Like, you think I'm going to make money on anything?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just these kinds of people. So this was a stressful one to put out for stupid reasons. Stupid reasons. But here we are. Coma Shopped Operative. This is October Sequence by Sheila E. Murphy. Poet I really like. One of the first avant poets I met when I performed with the B Blank Consort.
Yeah, I think of her as a friend of John and Kathy's.
Very much, yeah. And so these are poems. I don't know how to capsule some of these poems, but
she was largely published in the Lost and Found Times.
Yeah.
That's how I know of her.
Right.
But I imagine she's published elsewhere too.
Yeah. But I definitely Lost and Found Times, and Luna Basante is was my main inroad to her. really nice stuff. Sheila's lovely to work with, wonderful person, one of the nicest people I've ever met.
How old is she?
Yeah.
50s, 60s?
60s, I think. Probably upper 60s. I'm guessing at this point. Again,
I'm only interested in
everybody's
old people.
older than I imagine them because I met them 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how to describe it without going on too long. So
Yeah.
but yeah, nice stuff. This is I Wake Up Each Morning Covered in Dust by Andrew Brenza. Somebody I don't know as well and haven't worked with a ton. I don't do a whole lot of blind submissions. I tend to ask people for stuff rather than that accept stuff. But this was, I thought, really pretty interesting. Concrete poetry. A lot of it is using not letters but punctuation marks and just dashes and things like that, so that a lot of it almost reads like either asemia or just kind of visual art, I guess, in a sense. But some pretty interesting stuff. A lot of range, and again, real pleasure to put this together. It was not real. Yeah.
Well, if we think of it as concrete poetry or even as visual poetry, it's quite rare for individual books of visual poets and concrete poets to come out. That's only their work.
Right.
It's almost exclusively compilations.
You're right. I hadn't really thought about that, but you are right. It tends to be just anthologies. So it was kind of a nice thing to kind of give a whole body of work, Andrew Brenza. Southeast Asian Zines, an informational anecdotal comic zine. This was put together actually by one of my students who was in the zine club I was just at. Odessa Mallorca. Her father was doing a research trip. He's a research librarian through Southeast Asia, where he's also done a lot of other kinds of research over the years. So he knows the area really well. So she took a semester traveling with him through, I forget what all countries, a number of countries. Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, and Nepal. And everywhere they went, she found zines. She just searched all of the record shops, the bookshops, the art spaces, museums, to find whatever zines she could.
That's impressive.
And this is really impressive. Yeah, and wrote about those, has images from them, did little breakdowns of kind of looking at the various motifs and kind of saying, okay, how do people tend to do things? These tend to be the kinds of zines people do, stuff like that, along with a full bibliography of all of everything that she found, and then also integrated with a kind of a almost like a travel narrative, basically. So there's also stuff about, we went here, we met this person and had this food and da-da-da-da-da. All mixed in with how she found the zines. And then it's also...
That sounds great. How many pages
also in
is
comic
that one?
Form,
Yeah.
So it is, let me see, 48 pages. And the one kind of weirdly frustrating thing we ran into, this was designed to be an actual zine, not a perfect bound book.
Yeah.
But because it's color, economically, what we discovered was that in order to actually, ironically, make it just a chapbook zine, would have cost something like 4 times as much money per copy as doing it as a perfect bound print on demand through Lulu.
Yeah.
And so we ended up having to do it as a perfect bound book in order to make it distributable, which is an interesting irony.
Counterintuitive.
It really is, yeah. And so it was actually harder to put together because it was designed to be a zine, which is of course the most appropriate thing, But it's really interesting, and I'm not aware of any. I'm not saying there isn't one, but I'm not aware of any other study like this.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it, but I would not know about it too. I'm
also,
sure.
same here, right? It's So this was her project. I was basically I was her independent study advisor on the project, and then when she got it done, I was like, this deserves to be published. I know a lot of people who are going to want to know about this stuff.
Yeah,
and so here we are.
Great.
only 3 more of these. Theatrics by John Krause. Krause has been around for a long time. Another person who has done a lot of stuff with Luna Basante. A really close collaborator with Jim Leftwich. This is the second book of his I put out, but the first Perfect Bound book that I put out. And it's plays, let's say, plays that do not read at all like plays, you know, because it's other stream stuff, you know. So like, yeah, plays, but plays that are basically, I think the way that I put it on the back is it's theater people like to talk about demolishing the fourth wall. These are plays that have no walls and no floor and no ceiling is kind of how I put it. Again, I'm not good at briefly describing the style of these things, but yeah, Krause, it's very kind of, I would say, like streams of vocabulary. It reminds me a little bit of some of Zara's. I told him it especially reminds me of some of Zara's plays, where it's like, this is a play, but don't try to construct any kind of narrative characterization, anything like that out of it.
A friend of mine made a film strip of a Zara play with me as Zara.
Okay.
And what is it? The Gas Heart, maybe? I can't remember.
Okay, yeah.
Is that
I mean, that is one of them.
Yeah, that must be the one, because otherwise I wouldn't remember the title probably. But Zara's instructions say that you're supposed to read his part, or maybe the entire play, I don't remember, in a completely affectless way. And that's partially because the tendency would be to read some of the parts really dramatically. And then I went ahead and read the parts dramatically anyway. So I probably ruined it from Zara's perspective. But that's out there online if you're ever interested.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. David and Amy and I, David who did the Babbage's Disease, and Amy who did the
translations, yeah.
We and a couple of other people that we were working with did a production of the first Celestial Adventure of Mr. Anti-Pyrene.
Oh yeah, I've read that one, I'm sure.
In the middle of a pasture to a group of cows.
Oh, that's great.
So this has a similar vibe. Like this begs to be read inflectionlessly.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah.
The image is by Brian Counihan from Art Rat. Really nice cover, I think. There's that, and then we are on to the brand new ones. Paul Kiley's Evoked Voltage. So this just came out this month. Noise musician who has been increasingly becoming also a sound poet, and especially with the performance that we saw the other day, really merging those things pretty closely. And so this is his first book of poems, or his first Perfect Bound book of poems. He's done some pamphlets and zines. But this is the first Perfect Bound thing, and it's a lot of alliteration, a lot of assonance, a lot of very meaty sound work, I guess. It's kind of sound poetry that gives your mouth a workout.
You could actually talk about mine while I'm in the bathroom.
All right, there we go. And this asshole.
This absolutely wonderful human being.
Who I hope won't set my house on fire. So, tentatively a convenience. Again, the first book I published by Tent. And this came about when he sent me a set of still images from the film version of this piece. And I was looking through those images, and I realized they almost work like a flip book, because you can kind of see let's say fucking with text prediction.
you could just, as I was flipping through them, it almost worth like a flip book. And so I wrote to Tent and I said, what do you think about publishing this as a flip book? That would be fun. And it was. Difficult with Lulu, with the print-on-demand printer, to actually make it a flip book that really works for various reasons, just because of the restrictions on formatting and stuff like that, but it still works. Yeah.
I'll read the back cover of it
right.
for this camera.
Let's do it.
Which hasn't been getting enough attention here.
I'm sorry, camera.
I am not a poet. I am a concrete essayist. I am not a conduit for a divine outpouring. As much as I love John Milton's Paradise Lost, I am not a humble medium for a hierarchy of genius. That doesn't mean that what I make happen is any lesser or morer than other things that are called poetry. Whatever. This is the last battery, so... In fact, the concrete essay displays itself unabashedly. It exults in itself. It is exaltation. Bathe in it, you won't drown. I made this happen, and you can further this for no better reason than because you enjoy doing so. Be an echo chamber with cracks in it. Let the words escape after they bounce around for a while. Tentatively a convenience, January 1st, 2025 EV. And my eyesight is getting worse, so that was actually a little bit hard for me to see. But I did make it through. So I blame any of the clunkiness of that reading just now on my deteriorating eyesight, which still isn't too bad, but, it's worse than it was.
Enough to blame.
All right. Well, then we're done. Unless you have more that you want to say, which is fine.
No, I think that's fine.
I was going to do all of your publications,
but we don't really have the battery.
Well,
or the room.
I don't have to use this camera. I can always not use it, or I could also recharge batteries because I have a battery recharger. But I think that, and of course, I was reading to this camera, but I don't actually know whether it's still on. Yeah, it's still on, so that's fine. Do you want to, maybe you could just give a recap, like you could say, Monocle. Well, why don't you explain? I don't think you explained the name of the press.
Oh, that is true. Actually.
So why don't you hold this sign and explain the name of the press?
All right.
Hold it up a little bit. There we go. That's good. I'm going to zoom in on that sign. At least a little. Okay. So explain.
All right. So monOcle-Lash. The name monOcle-Lash comes out of my research on the ecstatic nerve. And when I was working on the ecstatic nerve, going through all of these sources, so much of the work on that book was just going, because so much of it is collage from passages from books. And going through all of these things, and what I start to pick up on, both from images and from the texts, is that without making a big to-do about it, throughout the 19th century, you can see this motif of the avant-garde using monocles. And I believe,
and Tristan Tzara did it, as I recall.
Tristan Tzara did it. Basically, the first 20 or 30 pages of the ecstatic nerve are just pictures and quotations about avant-gardists wearing monocles. 20 pages worth, which I think came out of dandyism initially.
That makes sense,
right? And you can take it all the way, at least up through George Maciunas with the one blacked out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, looking at that, I'm like, okay, monocles I've never seen it quite explicitly pointed out, but implicitly it's actually all over the place, that monocles have served as this kind of symbol for the reinvention, or the self as art form, And so that's where the monocle comes from, and of course you need to lash yourself into doing this, or if the monocle is an eye, it has eyelashes, but they're now monocle lashes, because the monocle is now part of your eye, because you become the thing you designed. So that's the idea of monOcle-Lash anti-press.
And why the mustache?
That actually came from David Hartke, who went by Dada David Hartke at the time, who was one of the co-founders of the post-neo absurdist movement. He designed the logo, and he was the one who decided it should have a silly mustache.
He probably thought that the silly mustache went along with the monocle.
I think that's
imagine.
it. Right,
Yeah.
right. So I'm like, yeah, fair enough. So that is his contribution.
And then, given that it is a press, why is it an anti-press?
So that again goes back to early post-neo, and one of the we call them talismanic phrases that we would use, whether it's in stamps or in performances or whatever. It's just anti.
Yeah.
Anti this, anti that. And for me, that didn't mean against; it meant an inversion.
Yeah.
And so it's not that it's an unpress. It's not that it's not a press. It's not that it's against presses. It's that it's a press that's not a press. It's a press that's operating on an upside down kind of
Or just a
set of
press that
priorities
publishes things that are
that are
underpublished
anti-
otherwise.
Right.
That
right.
that also take a rebellious stance
right.
against mainstream society.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Publishes the unpublishable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so especially in a lot of my older work, you'll see the word anti all over everything, along with bar, and vim, vom, vim, and itnanuet, which is the un-anti reversed. Yeah. All of which came up again in the Arthur Dye's, the vision that he saw, which was that I read at AfterMAF, which is basically, it's basically an anti-prophecy.
Yeah, you don't have the Arthur Dye's books in here, even though they fit in with the...
They fit in, but they are published on Luna Basante.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, that is good enough. Cool. One last chance before I press this button.